Chapter 460. Trial of Destiny Mission Details. Zhuanzhu assassinates Wang Liao. A comet attacks the moon. Niezheng assassinates Hanan. A white rainbow pierces the sun. The collapse of the empire will not happen overnight. Boom! In a flash, the bloody light in front of Wang Chong flourished as countless illusions rushed at him. Rumble! Rumble! A massive continent appeared in front of Wang Chong. The Central Plains. Although this was the first time he had seen it, Wang Chong was absolutely certain. But in the next moment, rumble! The sky collapsed in the southeast, the earth sank in the northwest. As Wang Chong watched, the land of the southwest collapsed. A bloody light soared into the sky, transforming into a roaring flame that engulfed the entire divine continent. In just a few moments, the entire continent was engulfed in a sea of fire. Ah! The earth sank, and a wretched scream suddenly reached Wang Chong's ears, threatening to tear apart his eardrums. Following that, one person's scream turned into hundreds, thousands. Countless people's screams echoed in the air. Rumble! Countless buildings collapsed one after another, turning into scorched earth amidst the flames and smoke. Corpses! Countless corpses! The old, the young, the strong, the infants, the women, the men. Thousands of corpses piled up in the thick smoke and fire, turning into a mountain of corpses that filled the entire land in front of them. Between the mountains of corpses, thick blood surged violently, like a roaring sea, covering the entire divine continent. Wang Chong heard the endless clashing of metal, saw an endless horde of foreign cavalry, and war banners, galloping across the land of the Central Plains. The sky was dyed red, the earth sunk. In the final scene, Wang Chong saw countless piles of bones floating in the sea of blood, as well as the dragon banners that had fallen amidst the flames and smoke. This prosperous empire that had lasted for nearly 300 years, the culture of the Central Plains that had flourished for more than 3,000 years, had been reduced to ashes. Whoosh whoosh. A series of whooshing sounds entered his ears. Wang Chong opened his eyes. In the sky, that huge golden eagle king had just landed on his arm. There are always clues to the development of any matter. Rise and fall, birth and death. The replacement of any empire, the birth and death of a civilization, all have their own sequence. When the southwest collapsed, the earth collapsed. An empire that had lasted for more than 300 years, on the verge of exhausting its last bit of strength, collapsed in the afterglow of the setting sun. When Qin loses its deer, the world pursues it. The god of death walks on the earth, and the horn has been blown. When a huge creature collapses, it will attract a group of hungry beasts. This is our last chance. Either we save this war, or we slide further and further into the abyss of death, until we are destroyed. The trial of destiny. Empire's elegy officially begins. That when the golden eagle king folded its wings and stood motionless on Wang Chong's arm, the final voice of the stone of destiny in Wang Chong's mind faded away. As he gazed at the eagle king in his hand, Wang Chong felt a wave of cold wash over him, his heart unprecedentedly cold. The War of the Nanjiao. As he listened to that enormous bell in his mind, that voice brimming with warning, Wang Chong could only think of one thing. Only the War of the Nanjiao in the southwest was worthy of the Stone of Destiny's warning. But how could this be? Wasn't the War of the Nanjiao still half a year away? Why now? This was completely unacceptable. No, it can't be. With one last sliver of hope, Wang Chong tore off the metal cylinder from the Eagle King's leg. The metal cylinder contained a crumpled letter. The handwriting on the letter was extremely sloppy. It was clear that it had been hastily written under extremely urgent circumstances. There were even specks of blood on the letter. But Wang Chong could recognize the handwriting on the letter at a glance. It was Solitary Wolf's handwriting. In the past half-year, he had seen many similar handwriting on the eagle's body. To young Master Chong, to Solitary Wolf. According to young Master's orders, after entering the southwest, this subordinate has been in constant contact with Governor Zhang Wentua of the Sword Pavilion. The southwest is in great danger. What followed was a series of sloppy scribbles. Traces of black ash could be seen on the letter, as if it had been written by the stove of some commoner's home. The wife and daughter of the king of the Mengshi Zhao Empire, Jelifeng, entered the Sword Pavilion. According to young Master's orders, Young Master Zhang Wentua was closely monitored, but young Master Zhang Wentua was not suspicious. Jelifeng's wife and daughter stayed for 15 days. Everything was normal. This subordinate did not discover anything. On the 15th day, this subordinate entered the governor's residence and paid a visit to Zhang Wentua. Zhang Wentua was not around. The maids were killed, and his corpse was strewn all over the residence. Jelifeng's wife and daughter were killed, and his guard's throat was crushed. Shock. It was too sudden. How could this be? The governor's residence was on fire. After leaving the governor's residence, I discovered unfamiliar black-clothed men. They were extremely powerful, and this subordinate was not a match for them. Meng Shizhao attacked the city, and the city was breached. According to young master's orders, this subordinate rushed to the city lord residence. Zhang Wentua returned to the residence and drew his sword, preparing to commit suicide. This subordinate saved Zhang Wentua and was about to leave when a large number of black-clothed men suddenly appeared. This subordinate was severely injured. The further he went, the more sloppy the words became. Many of them were indistinguishable. Lone Wolf seemed to be affected by the injuries on his body, as he wrote whatever came to his mind. It's Solitary Wolf's blood. Wang Chong suddenly realized that the blood on the letter was Solitary Wolf's blood. The affairs of the Southwest had always been Wang Chong's focus. Thus, before Solitary Wolf left, Wang Chong had instructed him to report everything regarding Zhang Wentua, regardless of whether it was important or not. Solitary Wolf was injured, but too many things had happened in a hurry, so it was impossible to write everything down. Thus, he wrote whatever came to his mind in this manner. Other than the Tang dynasty and Meng Shizhao, there is a third faction in the city. This subordinate saw them slaughter Meng Shizhao's cavalry with my own eyes. The city is on fire, and corpses are everywhere. The black-clothed men are searching for Zhang Wentua. They haven't said a word, completely disregarding me. All of their attacks are directed at Zhang Wentua, as if they must obtain Zhang Wentua's corpse. I don't understand. If they wanted to kill Zhang Wentua, why didn't they make a move when Zhang Wentua was preparing to commit suicide in the city lord residence? Zhang Wentua is still unconscious, and he has already consumed young master's medicine. There are too many confusing things. This morning, the messenger pigeon was captured, and all news in the city has been suppressed. It's the black-clothed men. The situation is urgent, and the city is filled with Meng Shizhao's cavalry. Fortunately, we have prepared a secret passage according to young master's instructions. Those people are relentless in their pursuit, and there is the danger of being discovered at any moment. There is no chance to send a message. There is no chance to send a message. Tomorrow will be the last attempt. Rest assured, young master, this subordinate will not let you down and send Governor Zhang out. That the letter didn't continue after that. Everything had been confirmed. The Battle of Nanzhao. It really was the Battle of Nanzhao. The last shred of hope in Wang Chong's heart was extinguished at this point, and his heart turned cold. And after the coldness, there was an unprecedented wave of chaos, anxiety, and unease. There was nothing in front of him, but Wang Chong could hear the rumbling of something. Faintly, Wang Chong seemed to see the southwest of the empire collapsing, and flames soaring into the sky. An intense sense of danger assaulted him, almost suffocating him. Why is it like this? Why is it like this? Wang Chong muttered to himself, his mind in chaos. As the sun began to rise, Wang Chong felt like he could hear the gates of the empire slowly opening. The capital was still filled with song and dance, but no one besides him understood what the empire was facing. Chapter 461. With the combined forces of Meng Shizhao and Uzan, the 180,000 elites of the Anong Protectorate were completely wiped out. The gates of the south were wide open, and the people were plunged into misery and suffering. But this was not the worst of it. When a tiger showed its age, even a monkey would dare to ride on its back. Pandora's box had been opened, and what awaited this empire was an unprecedented disaster. In a flash, countless thoughts flashed through Wang Chong's mind. He felt a chill run down his spine. No, none of this has happened, and the imperial court has not made a decision. As long as I avoid mobilizing the 180,000 Anon elites and infiltrating alone, There is still a chance. Wang Chang's mind spun. In his previous life, the Wang clan had already declined, and he was just an insignificant descendant of a declining clan. It was impossible for him to participate in a war of that scale. But things were different now. The Wang clan had not fallen, and their alliance with the King of Song was as solid as a rock. As long as he could convince Big Uncle and the King of Song, there was still a chance. No, I have to meet Big Uncle and the King of Song right now. Wang Chong abruptly turned around, and without any hesitation, he headed down the mountain. Big Uncle and the King of Song possessed immense influence in the Bureau of Military Personnel. As long as he could borrow their help to stop the imperial court from sending troops, there was still a chance to salvage the situation. The War of Nanzhao might not happen. At the very least, if the 180,000 elites were not completely wiped out, everything would be different. Wang Chong, where do you think you're going? Just as Wang Chong turned around, there was a flash of light, and a cold bellow suddenly echoed through the air. A figure like a large bird suddenly soared into the sky from the dense forest halfway up the mountain. With a boom, it landed heavily in front of Wang Chong. The Chamberlain of Dependencies is handling a case. Please come with us. That person had a cold expression, and his white robes fluttered in the wind. He exuded an aura as heavy as a mountain. Seeing the emblem of the Chamberlain of Dependencies on this white-robed man, Wang Chong's expression immediately changed. Buzz! Wang Chong didn't even think about it. He leaped forward and suddenly leaped in another direction. He had never feared the people of the Chamberlain of Dependencies. Even if he was in prison, he did not care. But definitely not now, definitely not now. Boom! However, almost at the same time that Wang Chong leapt out, there was a rumble. Another white figure fell from the sky like a wooden stake, blocking Wang Chong's path. This person had an icy expression, and the symbol of the Chamberlain of Dependencies on his chest was extremely eye-catching. Wang Gongzi, please. You can't escape. A country has its laws, and a family has its rules. If the emperor breaks the law, he will be punished the same as the common people. Do you still want to run? That a series of ice-cold voices reverberated in the sky like a great bell. Along with these voices, one figure after another fell from the sky. 2, 3, 4. In a few short moments, 6 callous figures had descended from the sky, surrounding Wang Chong like some mighty god, cutting off all his escape routes. These people were all profound martial realm experts at the very least. A light breeze blew past, and the forest was packed with people. In the first light of dawn, Wang Chong could see the imperial army of the imperial court, the prison guards of the court of judicial review, the experts of the imperial clan court. All of them had surrounded this place, and were currently making their way to the summit. After a night, they had finally arrived at Deflecting Blade Manor. Wang Chong's heart chilled, and he immediately stopped. Boom! When the news that Wang Chong had been imprisoned spread, the entire capital was thrown into an uproar. Any influential faction in the capital knew of last night's turmoil. Everyone was paying close attention to the development of this matter. And in the imperial court, this matter had become a major event. With such a large weakness in their hands, the Yao clan and King Qi were truly adding fuel to the fire, doing their utmost to exaggerate the matter. But the most astonishing thing was that the Imperial Army, Court of Judicial Review, and Chamberlain of Dependencies were fighting over the right to imprison Wang Chong. This had never happened before. As this matter spread, even the common people of the capital began to discuss it. But as more details began to spread from the Imperial Court, even the common people began to clamor. In the Imperial City, at the feet of the Son of Heaven, Wang Chong had led several hundred experts into Drunken Sparrow restaurant in broad daylight, and without a word, he had begun to kill. Even in the 300 years of the Imperial City, this sort of thing was rarely seen. And the many great clans and nobles involved in this matter, as well as the students from the Kunwa training camp, Longwei training camp, and Xinwei training camp, made the common people of the capital feel like they had been injected with chicken blood. There were far too many riddles in this matter. It could be said that Wang Chong had started a fight in Drunken Sparrow restaurant for his cousin, but later on, he had abandoned all the other people in the restaurant to pursue a Yuzhou, who under the command of Anong Protector General Zhang Shogui. This was a godlike turn of events. And this wasn't even mentioning that Wang Chong had killed another, who under Zhang Shogui's command in front of him. And the latter had never even met Wang Chong. There were far too many suspicious points in this matter. Why had Wang Chong done this? Was there really a need to make such a big fuss, just to avenge Wang Liang? And that who? Why did Wang Chong act like he had some deep grudge against him, even though he had never met him before? And on the second day of Wang Chong's imprisonment, the matter developed even further. When an important figure was dragged into this matter, let alone the common people of the capital, even the Yao clan and King Qi, who had been fanning the flames behind the scenes, were dumbfounded. Of the foreign brothers, in Yao Yuishan and in Wenjin, and Xiaojia's other sworn brother, was actually the Vice Protector General of the Northern Protectorate, and Sis Hun. Boom! When this news broke out, let alone the Yao clan and King Qi, even the mentally prepared Wang clan was stunned. Wang Chong had not only offended Anong Protector General Zhang Shogui, he had also offended Northern Vice Protector General and Sis Hun. In the Tang dynasty, and Sichuan's status could not compare to the Han like Zhang Shogui or Wang Zhongxi, nor could he compare to the more experienced Hu like Fomen Linta. But as an existence that could deal with both the Eastern and Western Turkic Khaganates, and Sichuan's status was no less than that of Geshu Han. And in some aspects he even surpassed him. And contrary to what many people imagined, and Sis Hun was extremely young, despite his lofty position as the Vice Protector General of Northern Protectorate. Of the 6 protectorates of the empire, he was definitely the youngest and the fastest rising Vice Protector General. His future potential was limitless. Not only had Wang Chong offended Zhang Shogui, he had also offended Bidings and Sis Hun. No one had expected this. The already intense debate in the imperial court was now even more intense. But no matter how intense the debate was, the Wang family maintained great restraint throughout the entire matter. Chapter 462. 6 days had passed since the eagle met Wang Chong. While the entire affair was causing a storm in the capital, only Wang Chong's faction had maintained an extreme level of rationality. It wasn't because Wang Chong had told them, but because they still had enormous confidence and faith in Wang Chong. This was a powerful cohesiveness. Come in. A voice rang out. An expert of the Court of Judicial Review coldly stared at the eagle, and finally gave the signal for him to pass. Many thanks. Old Eagle gave a long sigh, raised his sleeve, cupped his hands, and gave his thanks before striding into the courtyard. And this was already 4 hours after the eagle had handed over the token from the Bureau of Military Personnel. Before entering, Old Eagle took one last look around. This was a building built in the style of a government office, its roof covered in green tiles. The surroundings were lush and filled with tall trees, giving it a serene appearance. But in reality, this was an out-and-out prison. This was not the Court of Judicial Review, not the Chamberlain of Dependencies, and certainly not the territory of the Imperial Army. It was the place where Wang Chong was being imprisoned. Even if one had the token of the Bureau of Military Personnel, like the eagle, they would not be allowed to approach. In the capital, there was nothing more sensational than the matter of Wang Chong, an empire's protector general, an empire's vice protector general, a world of generals and ministers, 2 imperial princes, and the Yao clan. There was nothing more influential than this matter. This was the top-class game of the Central Plains. All sorts of factions were competing in the shadows, and the Imperial Army, Court of Judicial Review, and Chamberlain of Dependencies were also vying for jurisdiction over the Wang Chong incident. But none of the 3 sides could get what they wanted. In the end, they had established this temporary prison in the northwest of the capital to serve as the place where Wang Chong would be imprisoned. The entire government office was surrounded by Imperial Army guards, mixed in with experts from the Court of Judicial Review and Chamberlain of Dependencies. The 3 sides monitored and supervised each other, and at the same time, they worked together to guard the place. The security was so tight that outsiders could not approach. Young master. The eagle withdrew his gaze, a look of worry flashing across his eyes. Under the guidance of the Supreme Court's expert, he quickly stepped into the government office. Inside the government office, it was dark and quiet. Only a weak light shone in. The ground was made of green stone slabs, and when one stepped on them, one could feel the cold air. Along the long passageway, there was a sentry every 5 steps and a sentry every 10. Experts from the Supreme Court and the Chamberlain of Dependencies were stationed inside. Every one of them had a sharp look in their eyes, and when they saw the eagle, they did not look friendly. In the current imperial court, the ones who wanted to deal with Wang Chong the most were the Supreme Court and the Chamberlain of Dependencies. The eagle's identity was no longer a secret to them. However, as much as they wanted to punish Wang Chong severely, the Supreme Court and the Chamberlain of Dependencies were also fighting over Wang Chong's jurisdiction. It had nothing to do with Wang Chong's actions, but rather the prestige of the Supreme Court and the Chamberlain of Dependencies. This gave Wang Chong and the eagle a chance. The eagle ignored the unfriendly gazes around him. He lowered his head and walked forward. In the deepest underground of this government office, the eagle finally saw Wang Chong. Young master. The moment he saw Wang Chong, the eagle could not help but feel his eyes sting. Separated by a grid of fences, Wang Chong's long hair was draped over his shoulders, covering his face. He sat cross-legged on the ground, motionless, like a wooden statue. After 6 whole days, Wang Chong's skin was pale and his body was thin, as if he had changed into a different person. After following Wang Chong for so long, the impression that Wang Chong gave the eagle was that of a high-spirited person. This was the first time he had seen Wang Chong so haggard. "The eagle, you're here." As if he had heard the eagle's voice, Wang Chong's body trembled, and he finally turned his head slowly. His face was sunken and his eyes were dark, as if he had not slept for a long time. Around him, there were many papers scattered, densely packed with many things written on them. It seemed that this was what Wang Chong had been doing all this time. "Young master, don't worry. I will definitely find a way to get you out." The eagle rushed over and grabbed the bars of the cell. "Let me out." "Hee, do you think I'm worried about this?" Wang Chong laughed and shook his head. His long hair immediately swayed like waves. Although he looked haggard, Wang Chong was extremely excited. His eyes were bright, and he looked more energetic than a normal person. However, the more Wang Chong was like this, the more worried the eagle was. "The eagle, let's not talk about this. Let me ask you, do you have any news of Lone Wolf?" Wang Chong asked. "No." Hearing Wang Chong speak of serious matters, the eagle shook his head. "We have cut off all contact with Lone Wolf. Even if we want the latest news, it will be 6 days later." A dim look flashed through Wang Chong's eyes, but he quickly regained his composure. Although Lone Wolf is fierce and courageous, he is also extremely cautious. He has already dug out a secret passage according to my instructions. If there are no accidents, he will definitely be able to leave safely. Life and death are decreed by fate. Lone Wolf and I have already died once. Even if something happens, we will already be mentally prepared. So young master doesn't need to worry. The eagle calmly said. Lone Wolf's martial arts were powerful, and he had long since reached the profound martial realm. Even if someone wanted to kill him, it would not be that easy. In contrast, he was more worried about Wang Chong. Wang Chong's current state was clearly not good. Moreover, there was a deep doubt in the eagle's heart. Regardless of whether the matter regarding the southwest Jianghe was true or not, it was still a matter of one city. Things like this often happened in Baiting, Anong Anshi and Longxi. Often a city would be repeatedly fought over lost, occupied. In the borderlands, this was nothing out of the ordinary. But in Wang Chong's view, this matter was extremely different. Now that he thought about it, Wang Chong had met Duke Jiao and Lord Wang in the Four Quarters Embassy. And even when he returned to Deflecting Blade Manor, everything seemed normal. All of these changes were due to Lone Wolf's letter. Wang Chong said nothing. Wang Chong did not wish for anything to happen to either Lone Wolf or Zhang Wentua. Lone Wolf had already fought with him several times. In his heart, Wang Chong also viewed him as a like-minded ally. There were far too few experts by Wang Chong's side who were capable of carrying out his orders. In Meng Shijiao's attack, Lone Wolf had sufficiently proven himself. And even though Zhang Wentua was inflexible, he was a loyal official. A person who was loyal to the empire should not have met such a fate. And this was precisely the kind of person that Wang Chong needed. In addition, there were still too many questions about this matter. Jiang'e city had already been occupied by Mengshi Zhao, and the matter back then had already been an unsolved mystery. At present, other than Lone Wolf and Zhang Wentua, no one else could explain what had happened. Wang Chong had to ask them personally. Chapter 463. The Eagle, how are things outside? Wang Chong said as he raised his head slightly. The Court of Judicial Review and the Chamberlain of Dependencies are keeping us in check. There are people in the Imperial Army who are against us as well. However, thanks to the Wuxia steel sword, the voices of those who oppose us are few and far between. The majority of the Imperial Army is still on our side. If not for their help, we probably wouldn't even be able to enter. The Court of Judicial Review and the Chamberlain of Dependencies have already dragged Gongzi into their private prison. The Eagle said discontentedly. Wang Chong smiled. Previously, he had been selling the Wuxia steel sword to the Imperial Army without restraint. At this moment, it had turned into his greatest advantage. Just like what the Eagle said, even the two opposing factions in the Imperial Army didn't wish for him to die. Instead, they were doing their best to protect him. After all, the secret of the Wuxia steel sword was in his hands. How are things with Big Uncle? Wang Chong asked. No. The Eagle shook his head. A conflicted expression flashed across his face. The Court of Judicial Review and the Chamberlain of Dependencies won't allow anyone from the Wang clan to enter. I was only able to enter because the King of Song paid a huge price and obtained a token from the Bureau of Military Personnel. But even so, I spent a lot of time outside. I'm afraid that Lord Wang won't be able to enter anytime soon. Tell him that no matter what, he has to come in. Wang Chong suddenly said seriously. In addition, tell my big uncle that no matter what happens next, no matter what he hears before seeing me, he and His Highness King Song must not express their opinions. Any opinions at all. This is very important, the Eagle, do you understand? Ah! The Eagle exclaimed in surprise. Wang Chong's expression was extremely solemn when he said those words. Even the Eagle rarely saw him like this. Gongzi, is something going to happen? The Eagle asked. He had followed Wang Chong for quite some time. Whenever this expression appeared on Wang Chong's face, it meant that something big had happened. The Eagle, remember what I said. Remember to tell him everything. Wang Chong shook his head and said with unprecedented seriousness, also, I have an important task for you. I want you to complete it in the shortest time possible. Young master, please speak. This subordinate will definitely do his best. The Eagle also said seriously. Very good. Wang Chong flicked out his right index finger, his fingertip pointing downwards, and pressed against a narrow piece of paper on the ground. With a light stroke, that piece of paper immediately flew out like an arrow and floated into the Eagle's hand. This is the map I've drawn up. The Eagle, I need you to help me sell the spirit veins during this time. The calm expression on the Eagle's face instantly vanished upon hearing these words. Gongzi, the Eagle was taken aback. He stared at Wang Chong in shock. Gongzi, why do you want to sell the spirit veins? This news was so sudden that the Eagle's first reaction was to wonder if he had heard wrongly. Wang Chong had a large amount of capital in his hands. The Hyderabad ores, a huge fortune, the deflecting blade manor, the spirit vein, and so on. But the most important, unique, and important thing wasn't Wang Chong's Hyderabad ores, but the spirit vein several dozen li away from the capital. The Hyderabad ores would eventually be used up, but the spirit vein could be passed down from generation to generation. It could help Wang Chong and the Wang clan gather talents and win over the hearts of the people. As long as the Wang clan had the spirit vein, regardless of the ups and downs of the dynasty, the Wang clan would be able to rely on the spirit vein to maintain its status. The Wang clan might not have had much of a foundation in the past, but ever since Wang Chong discovered the spirit vein, it had unquestionably become the foundation of the Wang clan. Only a madman would think of selling the spirit vein. If only Wang Chong had known this would happen, he wouldn't have offended the first prince in the first place. The Eagle, listen to me. I know what you're thinking. I'm not crazy. nor have I lost my rationality. As for the spirit vein, just do as I say. This matter has to be done, Wang Chong said. His expression was calm and his eyes were bright. He didn't seem crazy at all. How could he not know what the eagle was thinking? Under normal circumstances, he would never have made such a decision. But after being imprisoned for 6 days, selling the spirit vein was the result of his careful consideration. The Wang clan couldn't possibly continue for 100 generations. The eagle would never know that a massive calamity was about to strike. The storm brewing in the southwest was not some local battlefield, but the beginning of a calamity. When this calamity struck, no one would be able to remain unscathed. If all went as expected, even the spirit vein would explode. So how could it be passed on for 100 generations? Right now, Wang Chong was not worried about the benefits the spirit vein could bring to the Wang clan, but the war in the southwest that was about to shake the entire empire. Preparedness ensures success, unpreparedness ensures failure. Whether or not his plan would be effective, whether or not it could be stopped, Wang Chong had to prepare for the worst. The entire empire was still ignorant. Many people didn't even know that Jelifeng had attacked the Tang dynasty, and that the cities in the southwest had fallen. Solitary Wolf's news was much faster than the imperial courts. The chess piece that Wang Chong had planted was finally showing its effects. Compared to the ministers of the court, Wang Chong had known what was happening in the southwest even earlier. And he had also known what he was about to face. But Wang Chong had no way of warning those ministers of the court. This was a matter of national importance, and it was impossible to be biased based on Lone Wolf's letter. The Tang dynasty had its own channels of information. Even Wang Chong could only quietly wait for the news to explode. The Tang dynasty, Mengshi Zhao and Uzan. After several decades of peace, the 3 great empires of the continent were about to welcome a war of unprecedented proportions. This war involved more than 500,000 opponents and 180,000 Tang dynasty elites, totaling nearly 700,000 soldiers. Whether it was in Yuzhou, Baiting, Anxi or Longxi, a war of this scale had never occurred before. Even in the history of the Tang dynasty, the number of times a war involving nearly 700,000 soldiers had occurred could be counted on one's fingers. The Tang dynasty had already slipped into the abyss of decline. What Wang Chong needed to do now was to avoid this war as much as possible. And once war became unavoidable, Wang Chong needed to prepare for the worst. A war of unprecedented magnitude, a war involving 700,000 professional soldiers, was not something that any single person or faction could easily contend against. If he wanted to change this war, to change the fate of the Tang dynasty, he needed one thing: money. A vast amount of money, a vast amount of wealth that surpassed anyone's imagination. War had never been a simple clash of weapons, but a war of economics. In order to wage a war, one needed an enormous economy and a reserve of resources. Similarly, in order to intervene in a war, one needed sufficient wealth, an unimaginably vast amount of wealth. The greater the wealth, the greater the aptitude to intervene in a war. In normal circumstances, let alone someone of Wang Chong's wealth, even if any of the great clans of the capital poured out all their resources, they still wouldn't be able to reach this level of wealth. This was no longer something that a single clan, or even several clans, could do. For Wang Chong, only by selling the spirit vein could he gather this sum of money. The news of Jelifeng's attack on the Tang dynasty and the fall of the southwest was still on its way, but it wouldn't be long before it reached the capital. Thus Wang Chong didn't have much time. Wang Chong had to complete the sale of the spirit vein before the news reached the capital. Otherwise, the war in the southwest would dilute any activity in the capital. Chapter 464. In addition, there's one more important matter, Wang Chong indifferently said, his expression turning grim. Gather all the wealth we have, and send it all to the capital's Zhang clan. In addition, tell the head of the Zhang clan that the Wuxia steel weapons and the meteoric metal can all be started. Clap clap. Wang Chong swiped his index and middle fingers on the ground, and with a flick of his fingers, 2 pieces of paper flew up from the ground nearby and into the eagle's hands. Without my orders, they won't start working. Wang Chong said. But young master, the matter of the meteoric metal beyond. Didn't you order us to keep a low profile and not make any moves to avoid attracting the greed of others and bringing unnecessary trouble? I can't care about that anymore. If I don't use the meteoric metal now, I'm afraid that I won't have another chance. Wang Chong raised his head and sighed. The eagle stared in a daze at Wang Chong. Although he could understand every word Wang Chong had said, when put together, he couldn't understand a single word. But there was one thing that the eagle could be sure of. Wang Chong had already thought through all of these decisions. It couldn't be changed because of anyone, and it couldn't be changed because of anything. Yes, young master. The eagle slightly bent his knees and finally lowered his head. Between his doubts and Wang Chong, the eagle ultimately chose to believe in Wang Chong. Just like in the past. In addition, gather Zhao Jingdian and the others. Give this to him. Wang Chong handed over another piece of paper. Yes, young master. The eagle didn't have any more questions this time. With the paper and information from Wang Chong, the eagle quickly left the prison. The prison was quiet. After the eagle left, Wang Chong lowered his head once more. His eyes were fixed on the ground, and he did not move. If one looked closely, the ground around Wang Chong was covered in crisscrossing tiny scratches. If one stood up and looked down from above, one would find that the crisscrossing tiny scratches formed a map. It was a map of the southwest border of the Tang dynasty that was complicated and detailed beyond imagination. Countless pieces of paper were scattered on the ground. Almost all of them were written on the paper, all of them about the southwest. Not enough, still not enough. This is far from enough. What's missing? Wang Chong frowned and muttered to himself. Other than himself, no one knew what he was talking about. The southwest border was already in grave danger. 300,000 Mengshi Zhao troops, 200,000 Uzun troops. Once the war started, the southwest border of the Tang dynasty had always been peaceful. But the two powerful enemies who were eyeing them covetously would join hands and attack at the same time. The sword hung over the sky, and there would come a day when it would fall. As a general, what Wang Chong needed to do was find a chance of survival for the Tang dynasty and those 180,000 elites. Boom! Like a boulder thrown into water, the eagle left the prison with the news that Wang Chong was going to auction off the spirit vein. All the great clans of the capital were shocked. What? Wang Chong wants to auction off the spirit vein. Has he gone mad? The Huang clan head's eyes went wide when he heard the news. His first reaction was that Wang Chong had gone mad, or that the news was wrong. Of all the assets of the Wang clan, the most valuable was unquestionably the spirit vein in Wang Chong's hands. Why would Wang Chong want to sell it? Ha ha ha. The Wang clan actually wants to sell off the spirit vein. Buy. Buy like crazy. Without the spirit vein, let's see how the Wang clan can act so arrogantly. In the Duke Su residence, Su Bai reclined on a recliner, a letter in his hand as he heartily laughed. Last time, he had lost all face at the hands of Wang Chong. But Wang Chong was too powerful. So Su Bai had no choice but to swallow his anger. Even so, he had never stopped paying attention to Wang Chong. For the Wang clan to be willing to give up on the spirit vein outside the capital was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. This time, Su Bai was confident that he could convince his father to buy the spirit vein in Wang Chong's hands. Good. If the Wang clan wants to sell the spirit vein, why shouldn't we buy it? Pass down my order. Gather all the funds of our Chung clan. Even if we have to borrow from loan sharks, we have to get the money. In the residence of the Chung clan, one of the four great swordsmithing clans, the head of the Chung clan was also looking at the letter in his hand with delight. But father, didn't we offend Wang Chong last time? Won't he? By the side, the only son of the head of the Chung clan, Chung Gongzi Chung Shaoshan, couldn't help but interject. He remembered that when Wang Chong was selling Wuxia steel in the Blue Bottle Pavilion, the Chung clan had offended him quite a bit. Pa! Right after he said those words, he suffered a slap to his head. Those are two different matters. Business is business. What do you know, you stinking brat? If that lad from the Wang clan isn't willing, he wouldn't have taken it out to sell. The same thing was happening in other places as well. Father, what do we do? In the guest hall of the Grand General residence, Abutong put down the letter in his hand and turned to his father, Great General Abusi. He wasn't an authoritative general of the empire, and he couldn't compare to Zhang Shogui, Foman Linta, or Gao Xianji, who commanded hundreds of thousands of soldiers and wielded the power to decide the life and death of a region. However, the tens of thousands of Tongluo elite cavalry under Abusi were known as the #1 cavalry in the world, and they played an important role in the empire. Hearing his son's words, Abusi fell silent. It had been several centuries since the Tongluo had surrendered to the Tang dynasty, and if one were to look into it, it was already a matter from the era of Emperor Taizong. The favor of the previous emperor had long since vanished into thin air. The reason why Abusi was still able to lead the Tongluo to the pinnacle 100 years later and suppress the other Turks, and who was because of his loyalty to the royal family and his extreme caution. But the Tongluo were also extremely prideful. If not for this pride, the Tongluo elite cavalry wouldn't have been publicly acknowledged as the strongest cavalry in the world. The regional commander's incident, Wang Chong's memorial, had left Great General Abusi in an ugly position. Before all the officials of the court, Abusi had no choice but to kneel. If it had been the Wang clan's old master, Abusi would have accepted it. But how could Abusi not remember how he had been forced into such a state by a teenage brat like Wang Chong? Pass down my order, collect the treasures of our Tongluo tribe, and exchange them for gold. Buy as many spirit veins as you can. Abusi sternly said. Yes, father. Abusi was overjoyed. Understanding his father's intentions, he immediately turned around and flew away. Spirit veins were priceless treasures, and it was only a matter of time before the Wang clan regretted selling them. The reason why his father had agreed to buy them was because he had a grudge against Wang Chong and wanted to teach him a lesson. As for wealth, the Tongluo had never cared about gold and silver. Wang Chong, you'll regret it when the time comes. Abusi laughed heartily in his heart as he flew away. The Yao clan and King Qi residents, the two sworn enemies of the Wang clan, were also perplexed. Father, what is that lad up to? In the Yao clan residence, Yao Feng frowned in confusion. Even though he had been overshadowed by Wang Chong, he was no fool. The Wang clan's actions were extremely suspicious. If we want to know what they are up to, we have to know what they are trying to achieve by doing this. Without a doubt, the Wang clan is trying to exchange the spirit vein for money, and a large amount of money at that. Yao Guangyi lowered his head as a contemplative gleam flashed across his eyes. But what does the Wang clan need so much money for? Isn't that lad's wealth already comparable to a country's? How could he possibly have so much money? Yao Feng said. Once wealth reached a certain level, it would become just a concept, a number. Coming from a top-notch clan in the Tang dynasty, Yao Feng was well aware of this. Once one's wealth reached a certain level, one wouldn't be able to use so much money. By then, no matter how much money one had, it would only be a number, and it wouldn't change one's life. It's impossible for us to spend so much. But that lad might not be the case. Yao Guangyi lifted his head and sneered coldly. Yao Guangyi wasn't a fool. The Wang clan had amassed a huge fortune through the Wuxia steel, but a portion of this fortune had disappeared without a trace. Even though Yao Guangyi hadn't figured it out yet, given the Yao clan's capabilities, he was still able to find some clues. It was just that Wang Chong's thoughts were too profound, and it was hard to fathom them. There were some things that even if Yao Guangyi could sense, he wouldn't be able to understand what he was doing. At the very least, those actions were meaningless to Yao Guangyi. Father, if that's the case, then we can't let him get away with it. A sharp glint flashed across Yao Feng's eyes as he spoke without hesitation. Wrong. Yao Guangyi sneered coldly as he put down the news in his hands. His gaze was deep and sharp. No matter what that lad wants to do with so much money, we have to do what we have to do. Even if that lad wants so much money to rebel tomorrow, we will buy as much of that spirit vein as we can. Why shouldn't we do something that will benefit our Yao clan? Feng'er, remember this. Don't let your emotions affect your decisions. Yao Guangyi raised a finger and said. Yao Feng was taken aback, and he couldn't say a single word. At almost the same time, King Qi and the other great clans in the capital made the same decision. Just like that, a hidden auction began. Whether it was the Yao clan, King Qi, or the other great clans, it was only a very long time later that they realized what they had done. The preparations for the Eagle's auction went much faster than expected. On the very same night that the news spread, the Eagle began its auction. Now we will auction the first plot on the Spirit Vein. It has an area of 20 zhang, enough for 5 people to cultivate on. The starting price is 30,000 gold taels. 60,000, 70,000, 110,000, 180,000, 230,000. In a remote alley in the capital, there was a dense crowd. Almost all of the great clans of the capital were present. The announcement of the Eagle's auction was like a boulder falling on the ground, and the entire room was thrown into an uproar. Everyone seemed to have gone mad, and in a few short moments, the Spirit Vein, with a radius of several zhang, went from 60,000 to 100,000, and then to 230,000. Chapter 465. Clack. Footsteps echoed through the gloomy prison. While the Eagle was auctioning off the Spirit Vein and stirring up a frenzy, Wang Chong had a visitor. His clothes were as white as snow, his expression cold, and he wore the insignia of the Chamberlain of Dependencies. It was an old acquaintance of Wang Chong's. Wang Chong, just what are you doing? Zheng Qinzhou slowly walked up to the bars. Through the bars he gazed at the cross-legged figure of Wang Chong. Lord Zheng, are you not going to help the who suppress the Han? Wang Chong did not even raise his head, his voice unperturbed. Hearing Wang Chong's mocking voice, Zheng Qinzhou's face flushed with anger. Wang Chong, don't get too pleased. Do you think you can still leave? The Wang clan is powerful, but it can't control our Chamberlain of Dependencies. I never said that the Wang clan could interfere here. Wasn't that what you said? Wang Chong indifferently said. You. Zheng Qinzhou angrily snorted and fiercely swung his sleeve. Wang Chong, you're the one who delivered this chance to me. In broad daylight, you actually dared to kill someone in the capital. Does your Wang clan still have any laws? Wang Chong's eyes flashed, and for the first time, he did not immediately retort. There are some things that must be done. You don't understand, and I don't blame you. In the future, you will understand just what you said today. I'm for a life. A country has its laws and a clan has its rules. If the Son of Heaven breaks the law, he will be punished the same way as the common people. Let me tell you, Wang Chong, no matter how powerful your Wang clan is, I will make sure you go through prison. Zheng Qinzhou harshly said. In the entire capital, Wang Chong was at the top of the blacklist of the Chamberlain of Dependencies. If there was one person in the capital that the Chamberlain of Dependencies hated to the bone, it was undoubtedly Wang Chong. However, Wang Chong was no ordinary scion of an aristocratic family, nor was he so rash. Thus, even after so long, the Chamberlain of Dependencies had been unable to do anything to him. If he didn't seize the opportunity this time, then it would be very difficult to get him in the future. Wang Chong was silent. It was rare that he didn't continue. I do hope that your wish will come true. Unfortunately, I'm afraid that you won't be able to restrain me. Wang Chong said indifferently, and his voice revealed a trace of sadness. Wang Chong, don't think that we don't know what you've done outside. Let me tell you, even if your Wang clan sells the Spirit Vein, no matter how much money you get, it's still useless. Zheng Qinzhou sneered. So, everything is for this? Wang Chong suddenly raised his head and sneered, his eyes blazing like torches. Zheng Qinzhou's expression froze, and he was momentarily speechless. I don't know what you're talking about. Zheng Qinzhou coldly said, but his gaze subconsciously shifted to the side, not daring to meet Wang Chong's gaze. When did the buying and selling of the capital become so important to the Chamberlain of Dependencies? What, the Eagle must have sold a lot of Spirit Veins, right? Even the Chamberlain of Dependencies can't sit still. Did he send you to test me? Wang Chong grinned. Although he was smirking, Wang Chong's eyes were sharp and profound, seeming to pierce through one's heart. Although Zheng Qinzhou was much older than Wang Chong, in front of this teenager, he was still embarrassed. It was like he was naked and had no secrets, making him feel very uncomfortable. The fact that the eagle was selling spirit veins in the capital naturally could not be hidden from the Chamberlain of Dependencies. Given the amount of trouble Wang Chong had caused, and the degree of threat he posed to the Chamberlain of Dependencies, how could the Chamberlain of Dependencies not guard against him and pay attention to him? It could be said that no strange move by Wang Chong could be hidden from the Chamberlain of Dependencies. Given the status and influence of the Chamberlain of Dependencies, it had never treated a teenager with such importance. However, when considering the trouble Wang Chong had caused for the Chamberlain of Dependencies, whether it was the regional commander's incident, the prince's incident, or this time, no one in the Chamberlain of Dependencies, including Zheng Qinzhou, felt that this was a minor matter. He was only a teenager, but he had already stirred up so much trouble. If he got a little older, it would be even worse. If they did not think of a way to deal with Wang Chong, lock him in prison, and resolve this problem, who knew how much trouble he would cause in the future? Wang Chong, don't get too cocky. The Court of Judicial Review and the Chamberlain of Dependencies are about to come to an agreement. When that time comes, I want to see how you'll be able to laugh. Zheng Qinzhou fiercely flung his sleeves, angrily storming away. The Court of Judicial Review and the Chamberlain of Dependencies. Wang Chong stared at Zheng Qinzhou's back in a daze. After a long while he gave a long sigh. No matter how the Court of Judicial Review and the Chamberlain of Dependencies planned to deal with him, it was no longer important, because a massive storm was about to sweep through the empire. Boom! The news from the southwest came much faster than Wang Chong had imagined. On the second day after Zheng Qinzhou left his prison, a piece of news shook the empire. In the southwest, the king of the Mengxi Zhao Empire, Jelifeng, had personally attacked Tej City on the southwest border. Jianghe Governor Zhang Qiantua had committed suicide, and the entire city had been almost completely destroyed. And this had happened more than half a month ago. Jelifeng had sealed off the news, so not even the nearby Annan Protectorate headquarters knew of it. Only when Mengxi Zhao's army had completely withdrawn did the traveling merchants discover this tragedy. The entire empire was shaken by this news. Everyone in the imperial court was so shocked that they couldn't speak. Bang! A palm slammed heavily on the table, causing the palm to turn red, and the table was almost cracked. Bastard! Has Jelifeng gone mad? How dare he? How dare he attack a city of the Tang dynasty? The person who said this was not someone from the Ministry of War, but an imperial censor of the court. Zhang Fei's hair and beard stood on end, his face bristling with rage. Absurd! What has the Annan Protectorate headquarters been doing? The imperial court hasn't lacked silver or grain for so many years, but they were told to do something like this? In the entirety of the southwest, at such a close distance, they didn't even know that a city had been breached. Is Jelifeng rebelling? The Tang dynasty has treated him well, but he dares to bite the hand that fed him and attack the Tang dynasty. Immediately send out the army and exterminate Jelifeng. Mengxi Zhao's people are too impudent. Whether civil or military officials, the Bureau of Revenue, the Bureau of Personnel, or even a few offices that normally had nothing to do with the military, all of them were enraged by Jelifeng. Some of the officials from the Bureau of Military Personnel had even petitioned the imperial court. Victory and defeat are commonplace for a soldier. The Tang dynasty had been founded nearly 300 years ago, surrounded by great powers. This sort of war was not unheard of in the past. The Annan Protectorate, the Anqi Protectorate Longxi biting, it had happened in all of them. But the nature of this incident was completely different. Although it had happened before, it had never reached this scale. And there had never been a situation where an existence on Jelifeng's level had personally attacked the borders of the Tang dynasty. The southwest border had been peaceful for several decades, and the Tang dynasty and Mengxi Zhao had always been at peace. And unlike the other powers around it, the Tang dynasty had provided Mengxi Zhao with much assistance. The writing language, culture, and court of the two countries were identical. If the Tang dynasty was the teacher, then Mengxi Zhao was the student. But this time, the student had disobeyed the teacher and breached a city of the Tang dynasty, even causing the death of a Tang dynasty governor. Chapter 466. But the true blow came from the common people. The southwest bordered Mingxi Zhao and Uzan, two foreign empires. It had the Tea-Horse Road, a place rich in profits. There were many people in the capital who did business there. When the matter of the southwest reached the capital, the mountain of corpses and sea of blood was not something that could be described in a single letter from the imperial court. Zhao Yuofeng was furious, so he didn't hold back at all. One could easily imagine the wretched state of the city. War! War! Mobilize the army and exterminate Mengxi Zhao. What is the imperial court doing? The Uzan are already attacking our Tang dynasty, so why hasn't the imperial court done anything? Exterminate them and teach them a harsh lesson. A debt of blood must be paid in blood. We must avenge the dead Han. Everyone was furious. The Tang dynasty had been peaceful for several decades. It had been able to rely on its army of several 100,000 to subdue the massive armies of the eastern and western Turkic Khaganates, Goguryeo, Uzan and Mengxi Zhao, and even the Abbasid Caliphate and Karak Spazinu of the far west. This was all because of its indisputable strength. In all these years, this indisputable strength had deeply honored the people of the Tang dynasty. And the war in the southwest had unquestionably made all the people feel a deep humiliation and offense. And when this humiliation and offense transformed into rage, the first to bear the brunt of it was the Annan Protectorate in the southwest. And Zhangqiu Jinxiong, as the previous Annan Protector General, was under even greater pressure. Bastard thing! Just what is Xinyu Zhongtong doing? I gave him the Annan Protectorate, but he actually made such a huge mistake for me. In the Minister of War's residence, Zhangqiu Jinxiong slammed his palm on the table, his face red with anger. The southwest was his territory, and he had presided over the border for several decades, never making a single mistake. Be it Mengxi Zhao or Uzan, they never dared to act rashly. They were not called the Tiger of the Empire for nothing. It was just that Zhangqiu Jinxiong could never have imagined that before he could even stabilize his position as the Minister of War and familiarize himself with the inner workings of the military, something like this would happen in his garrison at the southwestern border. What made it even more difficult for Zhangqiu Jinxiong to accept was that despite being so close to Jelifeng, Xinyu Zhongtong hadn't received any news at all. It was not until Jelifeng had retreated that Xinyu Zhongtong sent a message to ask him what he should do. Everyone in the capital was criticizing the royal court, and the royal court was shifting this pressure onto him. Zhangqiu Jinxiong felt like he was sitting on a bed of needles. During this period of time, the number of civil and military officials who came to visit him almost broke his doorstep. Even though none of them said it outright, they were all criticizing the previous Southern Protector General. There were even a few imperial censors who came to accuse him of being responsible. This placed an enormous pressure on Zhangqiu Jinxiong. He could ignore the other civil and military officials, but no one could ignore the imperial censors of the court. In the records of the Tang dynasty, many of the important officials of the court had been criticized by the imperial censors. If he made a single mistake, he might lose his position as Minister of War before he could even warm it. But even though his heart was filled with rage, Zhangqiu Jinxiong was also deeply puzzled. Jelifeng, oh Jelifeng, just what are you trying to do? You should know the consequences of recklessly attacking the Tang dynasty. This was not as simple as a dispute. Just what else has happened in the southwest that I don't know about? Zhangqiu Jinxiong muttered to himself, his mind spinning. As a great general, one's most basic ability was to remain calm. Although Zhangqiu Jinxiong was furious, he would not be so easily dominated by anger. After presiding over the southwest for so many years, Zhangqiu Jinxiong knew every blade of grass and tree like the back of his hand. Although Zhao Yuofeng had been eyeing them like a tiger watching its prey, and had always been filled with rebellious intent, he wasn't an impulsive, brainless existence. Zhangqiu Jinxiong would never believe that Jelifeng had mobilized such a large force just to break into a city and then retreat with nothing to show for it. This was not Jelifeng's personality. Zhangqiu Jinxiong was sure that something had happened here that he did not know about. But the southwest was very far from the capital, and a round trip would take at least 10 some days. But he couldn't wait that long. It really was Chonger's guess. In his massive estate, Wang Zhen sat on a wooden armchair, a worried look on his face as he gripped the letter in his hand. He had probably known about the Southwest much earlier than anyone else, but Wang Zhen had never believed it. It wasn't that he didn't believe in Wang Chong, but an important matter of state couldn't be decided so easily based on the words of an outsider, a spy. An important weapon of the state couldn't be treated so lightly. "My lord, it's time for morning court." A maid suddenly walked in and respectfully reminded him. "I know." Wang Zhen nodded, put on his last pair of boots, and left the estate. This was the first morning court session since the news of the Southwest had spread. Dressed in court robes, Wang Zhen was stunned the moment he stepped into Taiji Palace. The hall was packed with people. In the past, Wang Zhen would only see a handful of people when he arrived. There would occasionally be a few more, but not too many. But this time, almost everyone had arrived much earlier than usual. They were all whispering to each other, excitedly discussing something. Not even Wang Zhen noticed. The mood was completely different from usual. His Majesty has arrived. A few moments later, with the crack of a whip, hundreds of officials lined up, beaded curtains lowered, and an imposing figure descended. The morning court session had finally begun. The Holy Emperor has decreed that if there is a memorial, the court session will end if there is no memorial. In front of the sacred steps, a young eunuch with grizzled temples stepped forward and shouted in a shrill voice, "Your Majesty, this subject has a memorial." An old civil official over 50 years of age immediately stepped forward. This was a routine meeting of the imperial court. Grain taxes, irrigation, the livelihood of the people. There were far too many things to discuss in every court session. The Bureau of Works, the Bureau of Agriculture, the Bureau of Revenue, the Bureau of Personnel. One by one, they all took turns. Wang Zhen's eyes were closed, his body motionless. He was already extremely familiar with these procedures. "Your Majesty, this subject has a memorial. The king of the Southwest Mengshi Zhao Empire, Jelifeng, has disrespected the Tang dynasty and led an army to attack the Tang dynasty, destroying its cities and leaving mountains of corpses and seas of blood in its wake. Your Majesty, please make a decision." It was finally the Bureau of Military Personnel's turn. Before Zhangqiu Jinxiong could speak, a fifth-ranked general suddenly stepped forward, bowed, and loudly declared, "Buzz!" Zhangqiu Jinxiong's face twisted into a purple hue as he turned to look. In the entire hall, the originally trivial atmosphere suddenly changed and became extremely stagnant. "It's here." At almost the same time, Wang Zhen opened his eyes. The previous court session was only the foreplay. The real highlight was the war in the Southwest. "Your Majesty, Jelifeng has offended the Tang dynasty. We cannot let them off so easily. They must be taught a lesson for being so ungrateful. This subject suggests that we immediately attack Mengshi Zhao and make them pay the price." Another general spoke up, his voice impassioned. Wang Zhen recognized Wu Zhengpeng of the Bureau of Military Personnel, a fourth-ranked general. He was an old general in the Bureau of Military Personnel and did not belong to any faction. Both the King of Song and King Qi had tried to rope him in, but they had both failed. He was a staunch supporter of the war. In the Bureau of Military Personnel, there were many others like Wu Zhengpeng, who were loyal to the royal family and did not belong to any faction. "Your Majesty, this subject agrees. May the Holy Emperor dispatch troops to punish Mengshi Zhao. Let Jelifeng understand the relationship between a ruler and a subject. This subject agrees. This subject agrees. This subject agrees." In the hall, all the pro-war officials stepped forward to express their support. "This subject objects." Just when the crowd was in an uproar, a resounding voice suddenly resounded. A white-bearded civil official with an extraordinary demeanor and the air of a Confucian scholar glared angrily at the crowd. "The military is a major affair of the state. It cannot be ignored. Mengshi Zhao and the Tang dynasty have always been at peace. Why would Jelifeng suddenly lead troops to attack the Tang dynasty? There must be something fishy about this. Does Lord Feng mean to say that what happened on the southwest border is fake? So many civilians and Governor Zhang Qiantua died in battle. Did they die in vain?" A general immediately glared at him. "Lord Li did not say that. All of you keep talking about war. Do you know how many people die in a single war? So many people have already died. Do you want even more to die? This is a major affair of the state. We cannot act so rashly. Another official stepped forward and bluntly retorted. If there were pro-war factions, there would be pro-peace factions. This had been the case in every dynasty, and it was the same in this one. Rashly? You civil officials actually call this rashly? If Meng Shizhao does not learn his lesson, he will become even worse. If they become even bolder in the future, and more people die at the border, are you going to take responsibility? The generals of the pro-war faction who were rebuked flushed with anger. The atmosphere in the hall became tense in a short period of time. The civil officials and the military officials, the pro-war faction and the pro-peace faction, had always been at odds with each other. But this time was especially different. Soon, the controversy became an argument, and the argument became a quarrel. In the end, everyone joined in, and the entire hall was in chaos. Lord Wang! Lord Wang! Just as Wang Zhen was deep in thought, a voice suddenly reached his ears, followed by several other voices. Ah! Wang Zhen's expression froze for a moment before he regained his composure. It was also at this moment that Wang Zhen realized that the debate in the hall had stopped. Everyone looked at him with a strange gaze. Lord Wang! What does Lord Wang think of Meng Shizhao's attack on the Tang dynasty this time? A voice with a strange expression came from his ear. Wang Zhen was dazed for a moment, before he finally understood why everyone was looking at him like this. The Wang clan had always been on the same side as King Qi, so there was no question that the Wang clan belonged to the pro-war faction. Chapter 467. If it had been the Wang Zhen of the past, there would have been no doubt that he would have stood up for this matter. This was because the Tang dynasty had enough strength to deal with any side, whether it was Meng Shizhao, Uzan, the Eastern and Western Turkic Khaganates, Goguryeo or Arabia. Without this strength, the Tang dynasty would never have reached its current level of power. This was a point that every person of the Great Tang firmly believed. But this time Wang Zhen was silent. Wang Zhen's mind was filled with the words Wang Chong had sent to him through the eagle. No matter what happens, Big Uncle should not lightly express his opinion. These words had been spoken several days ago, and Wang Chong had apparently predicted something. Chonger, just what did you see? Just what is it about the imperial court that has you so worried about this matter? Wang Zhen's eyes were dazed, his mind in turmoil. Wang Chong's recent state had been far too strange, but no one dared to say that he had gone mad. At the very least, he had long ago learned of the news from the southwest, much faster than the imperial court had. It was hard to say whether this nephew of his had already predicted something. After experiencing so many things, Wang Zhen no longer dared to underestimate his nephew's opinion. Lord Wang? Lord Wang? A faintly discernible voice rang out. Everyone in the hall glanced at Wang Zhen in dismay. The Lord Wang of the past had always been astute, wise, decisive, but today, he had appeared to be in a daze twice, refusing to answer. The officials of the pro-war faction were even more perplexed by this. Wang Zhen and the King of Song were unswervingly pro-war. To be more precise, they were the standard bearers of the pro-war faction in the court. Although Wang Zhen was a civil official, the Wang clan was undoubtedly a clan of ministers and generals, possessing enormous prestige in the court. In this sort of situation, Wang Zhen had no reason to hesitate. This matter. Court dismissed. Before Wang Zhen could finish, a sharp voice came from the upper reaches of the hall. Bzz. Wang. Almost at the same time, an enormous pressure appeared in everyone's perception. Everyone was startled, and they hurriedly lowered their heads. However, before anyone could react, the huge pressure immediately disappeared from everyone's perception without a trace. Raising his head, he saw that the bead curtain above the main hall had moved, and that imposing figure had already disappeared. This is what happened to His Majesty, that everyone felt a sense of loss. The Holy Emperor rarely left without listening to his ministers' arguments. For a moment, no one could grasp His Majesty's intentions, and they were at a loss for what to do. Luckily, I managed to escape. On the other hand, Wang Zhen heaved a sigh of relief. His Majesty's attitude was unpredictable, but no matter what, at least he did not have to make his attitude clear. It's time to see Chong'er. Seeing the frowns on the faces of the warmongering ministers, Wang Jin flung his sleeves and hurriedly left the hall. This morning's court meeting was very uncomfortable. He had to figure out as soon as possible why Wang Chong told him not to express any attitude. The pressure from the Court of Judicial Review and the Chamberlain of Dependencies was unimaginable. Although he knew that it would not be easy for his big uncle to enter, it would be several days before Wang Chong was able to meet his big uncle. In the hidden prison, the candles flickered. Wang Jin was dressed in casual black clothes, his bearing calm and composed, but the worry on his brow could not be concealed. Big uncle. Upon seeing his big uncle, Wang Chong's eyes lit up, and he hurriedly stood up. After so many days, this was his first time seeing his big uncle. Chong'er. Wang Jin nodded. As his gaze swept over Wang Chong's gaunt figure, a hint of heartache flitted across his brow. Of the descendants of the Wang clan, the one that Wang Jin cared the most about was not his own son, nor was it Wang Chong's two brothers. Rather, it was this nephew that he had disliked the most in the past, Wang Chong. Seeing his haggard appearance, Wang Jin found it very hard to bear. But he clenched his teeth and hardened his heart, quickly regaining his composure. The matter of Wang Chong killing a large number of who in Drunken Sparrow restaurant, attacking the Yuzhou soldiers, and killing Zhang Shougui's subordinates in front of him, had caused far too much of a ruckus. Even biting Vice Protector General Insishun had been dragged in. Although Insishun was Vice Protector General, the Protector General of biting had always been an empty position. It had always been held by members of the royal family. In other words, Insishun was already the most authoritative figure in biting. Although Wang Chong had stirred up trouble in the past, none of it had been as big as this. The old master had already sent word that no one was allowed to interfere in this matter. Wang Chong had done something wrong, so he had to be punished. If not for this, Wang Chong would not still be imprisoned in the Imperial Army, Chamberlain of Dependencies, and Court of Judicial Review. Relax. After a while, when this storm has passed, no matter what the old master says, I will think of a way to get you out. My words are useless in front of your grandfather, but the words of the King of Song won't go unheeded. In the end, Wang Chong was still his nephew, and he couldn't help but feel a little sorry for him. Big uncle, I know that you want to help me, but I've never been worried about that. Big uncle, I know that you want to help me, but that has never been what I'm worried about. Wang Chong shook his head, a surge of warmth surging through his heart. Everything had a price, and when he had decided to deal with Yaoyuan, Wang Chong had already known what sort of price he would have to pay. Wang Chong had never regretted his decision. Wang Chong was now worried about something else. Big uncle, tell me, is the situation in the imperial court very bad? There's no need to hide it from me. I can guess. Wang Chong said, a hint of worry in his voice. In this period of time, he had been looking forward to news from his big uncle. The tragedy of his last life was repeating itself in this one. Wang Chong could smell the thick scent of a storm in the wind. Huh? Wang Chong sighed and nodded. Right now, the imperial court is full of voices calling for war. The voices coming from the imperial court, and the people are too loud. Even many of the old officials who support peace can't withstand the pressure, and have changed their stance. I can't last for much longer. Chong'er, you have to tell me, just why are you doing this? The clouds of war were thick over the capital, and in the few days that they had been preparing to meet with Wang Chong, countless officials had come knocking on the gates of the Wang residence to seek an audience with Wang Chong. All of them wanted Wang Chong to make his stance clear, but only Wang Chong himself knew just how much pressure he had been under in this period of time. Wang Chong had always doted on this nephew of his, but this was no trifling matter. Bang! Wang Chong had barely finished speaking when he heard a massive bang. Under Wang Chong's flabbergasted gaze, Wang Chong's eyes reddened as he suddenly bent his knees and kneeled in front of Wang Chong. Chong'er, what are you doing? Wang Chong's eyes went wide in shock. There was no doubt that Wang Chong's performance had completely surpassed his expectations. Big uncle, I know that you have many questions in your heart, and that you are in a very difficult position. But only you can help me with this matter. Wang Chong's eyes were red, and his expression was solemn, as he heavily kneeled on the ground. From the memories of his last life, there was no question that this matter had already reached its most critical juncture. In his last life, the Wang clan had long since declined, and was powerless to intervene in this war. But this time was different. If they wanted to avoid a repeat of the tragedy of his last life, they had to make a decision right now. They could not afford to make the slightest mistake. Chong'er, just what are you planning? Looking at his kneeling nephew, Wang Jin said grimly. His intuition, honed over several decades in the court, had allowed Wang Chong to sense that Wang Chong was plotting something. Big uncle, when the time comes for the final decision, no matter what, you must oppose this war with the king of Song. The war with Meng Shizhao cannot be carried out at this time. Wang Chong sternly said, his head deeply bowing. What? For the first time, shock appeared on Wang Jin's face. Chong'er, do you know what you're saying? Jianghe City has been reduced to rubble, and many civilians have died. This was not a simple resolution. If our Wang clan opposes the attack at this time, we will be condemned by the entire world. Wang Jin was truly stunned by Wang Chong's request. He had always believed that Wang Chong had kept him from expressing his stance, because he had something important to tell him. But this was definitely not the case. Abstaining, remaining silent, and not expressing one's stance. These were two completely different concepts from opposing the war. Moreover, our Wang clan and the King of Song have always been the banner of the pro-war faction in the court, and everyone follows our lead. It is precisely because of this that we have been able to accumulate so many connections in the court. The Wang clan can remain silent, can abstain, but we cannot side with Jelifeng and oppose the war. If I do as you say, the prestige that the Wang clan has accumulated over the decades will vanish in a single day. No, I can't agree to this matter. Wang Jin flung his sleeves and said without hesitation. He could have never imagined that this was what Wang Chong wanted him to do. If he were to do so, the Wang clan would lose the prestige that it had accumulated over the past generations. And when the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. No one would listen to the Wang clan's orders, or respond to its decisions. If he were to do so, the Wang clan's downfall would only be a matter of time. It wasn't without reason that many of the pro-peace faction were unable to hold on and change their stance. Big uncle, if we don't oppose the war, we might really be facing a calamity. Prostrating himself on the ground, Wang Chong said in agony. The Tang dynasty has existed for more than 300 years, and its collapse will probably happen today. In the vast divine continent, of the billions of people, only he and the Wang clan could have foreknowledge of this crisis and understand it. If even the Wang clan couldn't take the appropriate measures, what hope did the Central Plains have? Without a powerful Tang dynasty, when that calamity came, who in the world would be able to stop it? He had already failed back then. And if he were to start all over again in this life, would he fail again? Chong'er, just what are you saying? Wang Jin stood there in a daze, completely stunned by Wang Chong's words. Chapter 468. Big Uncle, once the war begins, the Tang dynasty will lose without a doubt. Wang Chong knelt on the ground and cried out in pain. I want to stop this war not because I want to help Meng Shizhao, but because I'm worried about the Tang dynasty. 300,000 Meng Shizhao elites, and 180,000 Tang dynasty Anan soldiers. Once this war begins, it will be a war of unprecedented proportions. Big Uncle, have you ever thought about what will happen if the Tang dynasty loses? Wang Jin was dumbfounded. As a civil official, he was not well versed in matters of military strategy. In this period of time, the court had been discussing how to punish the Meng Shizhao Empire in Jelifeng. No one had ever considered the question of the Tang dynasty's defeat, and no one had ever considered it from this angle. The Tang dynasty would not lose. This was a belief deeply rooted in everyone's hearts. But victory and defeat are commonplace for a soldier. Wang Jin had to admit that once the war began, there would be victory and defeat. The Tang dynasty was completely likely to lose. Wang Jin did not believe that the Tang dynasty would lose, but he was, after all, born into a clan of ministers and generals, So this was common sense. For a moment, Wang Jin was stumped by Wang Chong's question. The dark prison was cold, and the gloomy light illuminated the even colder floor tiles. As Wang Chong knelt on the floor, he felt waves of cold air coming from his knees, but Wang Chong's heart was even colder than the floor. All he could hear was silence. There was nothing but the sound of breathing, but Wang Chong could clearly hear the beating of drums. That was the warning voice of fate in the dark. A world of billions of people, after going one round, had once more stepped into the abyss of destruction. Dawn was coming, and there would be the first glimmer of light. Autumn was coming, and there would be the first fallen leaf. The war in the Southwest had never been a simple war. 180,000 elites had been wiped out, and the billions of people had been reduced to bones. For the first time in the Central Plains, the Tang dynasty had been completely defenseless against two foreign empires at its southwestern gate. This crushing defeat shocked the entire empire. It also shocked the boundless barbarians and jackals around the Tang dynasty. The death of 180,000 border elites caused the empire to suffer an unprecedented heavy blow. The entire military strength of the Tang dynasty suffered a huge loss of nearly a third. Such casualties were unprecedented in the history of the Tang dynasty. This war inspired all the great powers around the Tang dynasty. The Eastern and Western Turkic Khaganates, the Goguryeo Empire, the distant Abbasid Caliphate, Karax-Spazinu, and even Mengshi Zhao and the Uzun Empire that started this war. For the first time, the great powers around the Tang dynasty found that the Tang dynasty was not as powerful as they had imagined. It turned out that the current Tang dynasty was no longer the invincible and terrifying Tang dynasty. This battle allowed all the foreign barbarians around the Tang dynasty to see the weak side of the Tang dynasty. From then on, countless powers began to grow restless, and they stared hungrily at the Tang dynasty. Northwest, northeast, North Longxi, the Tang dynasty was embroiled in endless wars, and it fell into troubled times. A massive empire, the most powerful civilization in the history of the Central Plains, fell into decline, and it fell into decline. This was the eternal pain in the hearts of the people of the Tang dynasty. It was also the pain of the entire Central Plains. No matter what, Wang Chong had to change everything. Big uncle, I know that this matter has put you in a difficult position. But first uncle, please think about it. Since young, have I ever lied to first uncle? I know that big uncle is in a difficult position, and I have never asked big uncle for anything. But this time, I hope that big uncle can promise me no matter what. No matter how many people oppose me, or how many people slander me, I hope that big uncle can stop this war. This isn't just for the Wang clan, it's also for the Tang dynasty. One day, time will prove that I am right. At the end, Wang Chong clenched his fists tightly, and his head was pressed against the ground. His veins were bulging from the excessive force he was exerting. On this journey of vengeance, he was fated to be alone. Only by experiencing it for himself did he understand how difficult it was to change the fate of the empire and the world. There were far too many things in his heart that he couldn't tell anyone. Even someone as close as his big uncle couldn't convince him easily, much less anyone else. Wang Jin looked at the kneeling Wang Chong, his heart deeply moved. Although Wang Chong hadn't said much, Wang Jin could feel the unshakable will in his heart. Chonga, let me think about it. Wang Jin sighed, closed his eyes and fell silent. Military affairs were no trifling matter. One couldn't be swayed by emotions, and one couldn't neglect one's private interests for the sake of public interests. This was the principle that Wang Jin had upheld for many years in the imperial court. If it were any other descendant of the Wang clan, even if it were his own son, Wang Li, Wang Jin wouldn't even consider it. But Wang Chong, scenes of the past flitted through his mind. The regional commander's incident, the consort Taijin incident. Wang Chong had proven himself time and time again, and it was Wang Chong who had been the first to discover the recent war in the Southwest. Time and time again, he had proved that Wang Chong was right. He seemed to have some sort of foresight, always able to find the most correct path among the countless threads. Chonger, tell me that you won't regret today's decision. Wang Jin suddenly said. Big uncle won't regret it. Wang Chong was overjoyed. His big uncle's words clearly indicated that he was agreeing. Wang Jin suddenly gave a long sigh. Chong'er, I can agree to your request this time. This is the first time I've abandoned public interests for the sake of private interests. But it will also be the last time. Do you understand? Wang Jin opened his eyes. Your nephew understands. Wang Chong sternly said. If he didn't know his big uncle's personality, Wang Chong wouldn't have let his big uncle off during the regional commander's incident and only tried to persuade the king of Song. Speak. What else do you need me to do next? Wang Jin said, his expression much more relaxed. Wang Chong nodded. Big uncle, after we return, please tell the king of Song that no matter what, he must personally make an appearance. In addition, I have a letter here that big uncle should give to Yang Zhao. If we want to change the decision of the imperial court, we need big uncle, the king of Song, and consort Taizhen. In addition, big uncle, please tell the king of Song that we aren't helping Mengxi Zhao. Jelifeng's ambitions are too obvious, and she must be punished, but not now. Ask him to stall for time, and only act when he is fully prepared. So from now on, big uncle and the king of Song should mobilize the army from the Bureau of Military Personnel to the southwest. Just the 180,000 soldiers in the southwest are far from enough to deal with Jelifeng. Only an army of 300,000 or more can deal with Jelifeng. That's impossible. Mobilizing an army is no small matter. Even the king of Song can't make such a decision on his own. He needs the approval of the other officials. Wang Jin shook his head. The king of Song was an authoritative figure in the Bureau of Military Personnel, but he wasn't so powerful that he could blot out the sky with one hand. At the very least, King Qi's faction also wielded great authority in the Bureau of Military Personnel. Moreover, the Tang dynasty had always fought with the few against the many. The Tang dynasty had always walked the path of elite soldiers, and their soldiers were well equipped from head to toe. In terms of equipment, they were superior to all other powers. If they really mobilized 300,000 soldiers, they could easily crush Mengxi Zhao. That would be a war that could wipe out a country. Moreover, the Tang dynasty only had so many soldiers. If they mobilized 300,000 soldiers, the defense in other areas would become weaker, and that might cause even more trouble. Then we'll use the reserve army, the prefectural armies. This is the best source of soldiers, and we can bypass the Bureau of Military Personnel to minimize any resistance. Wang Chong's eyes were sharp as he spoke without hesitation. As the war saint of the Tang dynasty, and the last commander-in-chief of the Central Plains, Wang Chong had a far more thorough understanding of the art of war than his big uncle. The battlefield is the best furnace. 3 months is enough to train a regular army that would take several years to reach the standard. The prefectural armies are the best source of soldiers. If a regular army existed in a perfect military system, there would definitely be a reserve army. Mengxi Zhao, Uzun, Goguryeo, and the eastern and western Turkic Khaganates were all examples. Although the Tang dynasty did not have many soldiers, they had always maintained a large reserve army. The number of reserve soldiers was not large, but there were at least 200,000 of them. Moreover, the training of the Tang dynasty was far more rigorous than that of other armies. It was a complete system. An army that had undergone such rigorous training could enter the battlefield at any time. This was also the reason why the Tang dynasty was able to maintain a stable number of soldiers despite fighting 1 against 6 and suffering many casualties every year. However, reserve soldiers were still reserve soldiers, and they were severely lacking in battlefield experience. Although they could quickly train a large number of qualified and experienced soldiers, by entering the battlefield, the casualties would probably be high. Moreover, such a transfer of reserve soldiers would cause a gap in the military pyramid of the Tang dynasty. The training of reserve soldiers would be severely lacking, and it would have a great impact on the future. Wang Jin looked at Wang Chong with a strange look in his eyes. Wang Chong knew much more than he did. These words didn't seem like something a teenager like Wang Chong would be able to say. I will try my best to convince the king of Song. The war between the royal court and Mengxi Zhao will definitely unfold. If it is unavoidable, this might be the best solution. Wang Jin sighed. Also, there is one more thing I need to trouble Big Uncle with. Speak. This time, Wang Chong did not speak. Instead, he leaned forward and whispered in Wang Zhen's ear. Uzin. Wang Zhen's body trembled. He understood Wang Chong's meaning. Big Uncle, no matter what, you must bring these words to Zhangqiu Jinxiong. The southwest is not our territory. Only Zhangqiu Jinxiong's words will be listened to by Xinyu Zhongtong. Wang Chong said. Mengshi Zhao had never been a thorn in the heart of the Tang dynasty. The true thorn was Uzin. No matter what, they had to keep tabs on Uzin's movements. If they did not understand this, the tragedy of their previous life would only repeat itself. I understand. Leave this matter to me. In the end, Wang Zhen still left. With Wang Zhen gone, the dungeon became deathly silent. Come out. After his big uncle left, Wang Chong suddenly spoke without raising his head. At first, there was silence in the dark prison. After a while, a few figures appeared. Zhang Qinzhou led several experts from the Chamberlain of Dependencies out from the back. Wang Chong, I don't care what you're discussing with your big uncle. You won't be able to escape from this important matter. Zhang Qinzhou bluntly said. There's no need for you to worry about this matter. Wang Chong indifferently said. Zhang Qinzhou harumphed. Not wanting to invite a rebuff, he beckoned his subordinates over and left. Once everyone had left, Wang Chong once more extended a finger and began to write on the ground. Around him were countless square letters and maps of the Tang dynasty. Compared to a few days ago, they were several times more detailed and thicker. Chapter 469. The turmoil in the southwest had attracted the attention of the entire empire. Even Wang Chong could sense this from his prison cell. The people of the Court of Judicial Review and the Chamberlain of Dependencies had been watching him every day, but in this period of time, they had rarely appeared. The prison guards who occasionally came to deliver food also seemed absent-minded. The entire capital was somber. It seems like it's almost time to make a decision, Wang Chong quietly said to himself. Although he was anxious, there was nothing Wang Chong could do in his prison cell. He could only silently wait. Chonger. The next time he saw his big uncle was 10 days later. His big uncle was dressed in the robes of an official, his expression stern and inflexible. Upon seeing his big uncle, Wang Chong's eyes widened, and he suddenly had an extremely ill foreboding. The imperial court has already made its decision. It has ordered Xinyu Zhongtong to lead 18 elites of the Annan Protectorate, and immediately set out to attack the Mengshi Zhao Empire in the southwest to punish Jelifang's invasion of the Tang dynasty. What? Upon hearing this news, Wang Chong's heart chilled, and he felt a chill run down his spine. He suddenly remembered something, and rushed to the bars of the cell. Big uncle, how could it be like this? Haven't you, the king of Song, and consort Taizhen all intervened? Don't tell me the three of you have no way to stop it? The king of Song, the Wang clan, and the consort Taizhen behind Yang Zhao were undoubtedly the three major factions of the Tang dynasty, three titans. The combined strength of these three factions was enough to influence the decisions of the imperial court. Wang Zhen sighed. He did not hide anything, and gave a detailed account of what had happened. After meeting Wang Chong in the hidden prison, Wang Zhen immediately went to meet the king of Song. Furthermore, Yang Zhao was Wang Chong's sworn brother. These three forces were more than enough to change the entire royal court. However, both Wang Zhen and Wang Chong had underestimated one person. Is it the Yao family? A cold light flashed in Wang Chong's eyes as he suddenly interrupted. It would be fine if it's just the Yao clan and King Qi. Wang Zhen sighed and shook his head. Only those who had been involved in the court debate that day knew just how intense it had been. When Wang Zhen and the king of Song, who had always advocated war, stood out to oppose attacking Mengshi Zhao, the entire court was shocked. For a long time, there was a deathly silence in the hall. No one spoke. Even more surprising were the Yao clan and King Qi. These two clans had always been keeping an eye on the Wang clan and the king of Song. But when Wang Zhen and the king of Song stood out to oppose the war, the Yao clan and King Qi, who had always advocated for a retreat, suddenly stood out to criticize the Wang clan and the king of Song. They said that the two clans had colluded with one another, accepted Jelifeng's bribe, and strongly advocated for a war against Meng Shizhao. But it would have been fine if things had ended there. After all, the Yao clan and King Qi were still inferior to the alliance of the Wang clan, the king of Song, and consort Taizhen. But in the end, no one could have expected the most illustrious and low-profile person to suddenly stand out and change the outcome of the court debate. Who? Wang Chong's heart tightened. It's the Prime Minister. Wang Jin sighed deeply as he revealed the answer. Wang. The moment Wang Jin said those words, the dark prison suddenly fell silent. Wang Chong's mouth was agape, and his pupils constricted. He was unable to say a single word. Li Zhenu. This name was like a bolt of lightning, rumbling through Wang Chong's mind, echoing endlessly. In that instant, thousands of thoughts flashed through his mind like snowflakes. In the Tang dynasty, there was no position higher than the Prime Minister. It was truly a position that stood above all but one. Both the Wang clan and the Yao clan were inextricably linked to this position. This was also the reason why the Wang clan was known as a clan of ministers and generals. However, both the Wang clan's old master Jiao and the Yao clan's old master Yao Chong had already retired from the position of Prime Minister. The current Prime Minister of the Tang dynasty had long since changed. Li Zhenu was that person's son. In the Tang dynasty, this person was abnormally low profile. There was no one else in the illustrious position of Prime Minister who could keep such a low profile. Many people had even forgotten about his existence. But Wang Chong had never dared to underestimate him. I didn't think that it would be him. A sharp light flashed through Wang Chong's eyes. In the entire Tang dynasty, the one that Wang Chong feared the most was not the Yao clan or King Qi, but this illustrious Prime Minister, who always made people forget about him. In the entire great Tang Empire, apart from himself, perhaps even his uncle did not know how terrifying the Prime Minister, who was usually as amiable as a spring breeze, was. Everyone had greatly underestimated this Lord Prime Minister. Wang Chong had not expected this Lord Prime Minister to uncharacteristically join the War of the Southwest. The Yao clan, King Qi, and this Lord Prime Minister of the Tang dynasty were a force that could completely neutralize the power of the Wang clan, the king of Song, and consort Taizhen. In addition, there's one more thing. At the crucial moment, Zhangqiu Jinxiong stood on the side of King Qi and the Yao clan. Wang Chong was truly flabbergasted. Zhangqiu Jinxiong and consort Taizhen belonged to the same faction, and they had an extremely close relationship. It had been Zhangqiu Jinxiong who had sponsored Yang Zhao's entry into the capital. Consort Taizhen and Yang Zhao had opposed this war. But Zhangqiu Jinxiong, the Minister of War, had chosen to stand on King Qi's side. No one had expected this. One Lord Prime Minister was one thing, but now Minister of War Zhangqiu Jinxiong. The outcome of this court war was basically decided. Wang Chong fell silent. There's nothing we can do about it. His position as the Minister of War had not yet stabilized, and he was also the Annan Protector General of the Southwest. Now that a problem had arisen in his territory, the pressure on Zhangqiu Jinxiong could be imagined. Almost all of the generals under his command supported the war against Meng Shizhao. If Zhangqiu Jinxiong were to back down now, his position as the Minister of War would be in jeopardy. Wang Jin helplessly said. Zhangqiu Jinxiong's desire for power was simply too strong. His 10-some years of oppression on the border had made his desire for power and status far stronger than anyone else's. Wang Jin had originally thought that he could delay this court war for at least 20 days. But now that things had developed to this point, it was no longer up to him. There was nothing Wang Jin could do. It was quiet in the dark prison. Regardless of whether it was Wang Chong or Wang Jin, neither of them spoke. Only the flickering of the torches on the wall could be heard. Chong, what do you plan to do next? Wang Jin looked at his nephew in the prison and asked. All the plans had been arranged by Wang Chong, and he had told him what had happened in the court. Only Wang Chong could decide what to do next. I didn't think that I would still be unable to avoid it. Wang Chong gave a long and bitter sigh. When Jelifeng attacked the Tang dynasty, the imperial court had decided that Xinyu Zhongtong would lead 180,000 Tang dynasty elites to the southwest. If Zhangqiu Jinxiong had been the one leading the army, If Zhangqiu Jinxiong was still in the southwest, the final result might have been a little better. But Zhangqiu Jinxiong had already been drawn to power, and the position of Minister of War had become a shackle around his neck. It was easy to leave for the southwest, but difficult to return to the southwest. A Minister of War could not leave the capital to command the 180,000 elites of a border protectorate. There had never been such a thing in the history of the Tang dynasty. Man proposes but heaven disposes. He had been trying to avoid this war this entire time. But in the end he still couldn't avoid it. With this, the last sliver of hope in Wang Chong's heart had been extinguished. Since it was unavoidable, he could only face it. Big uncle, when did Xinyu Zhongtong leave? Wang Chong raised his head and closed his eyes. 4 days ago. The news was sent by the fastest golden eagle of the court. It should be delivered in 2 days. Given Xinyu Zhongtong's reaction, it should be another 2 days before he leads the army out to make contact with the Mengxizhao Empire. Wang Zhen said. It's already too late. Wang Chong mentally gave a long sigh. The journey from the capital to the Annan Protectorate was a long one. Even the fastest bird would take 6 days. By that time, the dust would have settled, and it would be too late to say anything. Big uncle, take me away from here, Wang Chong suddenly said. Bong bong bong. Crossing thousands of mountains and tens of thousands of rivers, passing through layers upon layers of space. In the distant lands of the southwest, dark clouds gathered. The beating of a drum suddenly soared into the sky. This heaven-shaking drumbeat startled the earth, startled the entire southwest. It had been a very long time since such a heavy drumming had been heard in the southwest. The last time such a thunderous rhythm had resounded through the skies had been 10 some years ago. By the order of the imperial court, we are here to punish Mengxizhao and raise the might of my Tang dynasty. In front of the vast and imposing hall of the Annan Protectorate headquarters, an inflexible, solemn, and dignified voice resounded through the heavens. The newly appointed Annan Protector General, Xinyu Zhongtong, was dressed in armor, his body exuding a chilling and powerful aura as he stood on a tall platform. On the platform, banners fluttered in the wind, their lofty pillars reaching into the heavens. And on the platform, a majestic atmosphere prevailed. The 180,000 elites of the Tang dynasty, who had been stationed in the southwest, were spread out in a dense formation, a dense mass of dark clouds in front of the Annan Protectorate headquarters. Fight! 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 The Tang dynasty elites waved their halberds, each of them letting out a heaven-shaking roar. Waves of essence qi burst out from their bodies like long rainbows, shooting straight into the depths of the dark clouds. The beating of the drums caused the earth to tremble. The mountains were silent, the mountains trembled, and the atmosphere was somber. Move out! Without further words, Xinyu Zhongtong gave the order. War horses neighed, and the 180,000 elites of the Tang dynasty galloped and roared like a dark cloud toward the southern Mengxizhao Empire. For the first time in the history of the empire, the 180,000 elites of the Tang dynasty had left the cities they had been guarding. After 10 some years, they were launching their first war against a foreign country. Other than a teenager in the distant capital, no one understood what this war truly meant. Even those who were in the game. Flap flap. Almost at the same time that Xinyu Zhongtong gave the order, and the army set out, messenger pigeons soared into the sky from all over the city. These carrier pigeons did not fly to the capital of the Tang dynasty. Instead, they crossed the borders of the Tang dynasty and flew to the northeast, northwest, north, southwest, and west of the Tang dynasty. Goguryeo, the eastern and western Turkic Khaganates, Uzan, Arabia, Karak-Spazinu, countless powers were paying close attention to this conflict between the Tang dynasty and the Mengxizhao Empire in the southwest of the Central Plains. The southwest had always been peaceful. This was the Tang dynasty's first large-scale operation, and the scale of this operation far surpassed that of its operations in Longxi, the northeast and the northwest. And this was also the first time the Mengxizhao Empire had participated in this conflict with the Tang dynasty. Chapter 470. Not long after Xinyu Zhongtong set off with his 180,000 elites, His gaze flitted across the vast earth, across the torrential Uri in the southwest, and across the vast forests. Move out! A hoarse shout tore through the sky. In the southwest, a middle-aged man with a tall and imposing figure and a black mustache, who looked like a hero and a bold vision, wearing a flat crown and an imperial robe, suddenly raised the golden sword in his hand. Waves of majestic chi, like the mountains and the seas, soared into the sky from his body. Rumble! The entire earth seemed to have suddenly awakened from a long slumber. It suddenly shook violently, and emitted bursts of loud rumbling sounds. Kill! 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 Boundless killing intent condensed into a tangible substance, and soared into the sky, stirring up the winds and clouds. Across the vast earth, one could only see the countless Mengshi Zhao warriors, armed to the teeth, shrouded in thousands of black and white war halos. They were like a ferocious flood of steel, surging toward the distant Annan Protectorate headquarters of the Tang dynasty. The rumbling of drums resounded through the world. Dark clouds churned in the sky. After 10-some years of peace, war had finally broken out in the southwest. Clang! A massive hammer swung down, smashing against a searing red iron. Sparks flew, the screeching of metal almost tearing apart one's eardrums. Clang, clang, clang. The massive hammer continued to swing down, once, twice, thrice, tens of thousands of times, and the number of hammers swung had increased from 1 to tens of thousands. On the massive Uzun plateau, flames roared and smoke roiled. Tens of thousands of short and capable Uzun blacksmiths were bare-armed, constantly swinging their hammers on this plateau, forging armor, sabers, swords, U-shaped horseshoes, arrows, and all sorts of other weapons in the open air. Sweat poured down their bodies, and it was through this scattered method that these Uzun blacksmiths forged an endless stream of weapons. Uzun's weapon forging was not as developed as the Central Plains, and it was not as effective. However, no one dared to underestimate the weapons forged on this plateau, because they used the most primitive and most direct method, 1,000 hammer 100 refinement. Uzun's armor didn't have any artistic beauty, much less any technical content. However, their armor was indeed the most solid, sturdy, and durable armor in the world. The weight of an Uzun cavalryman's armor far surpassed that of the Tang dynasty, the Eastern and Western Turks, Goguryeo, or even the Abbasid Caliphate or Karax Spazinu. This also made it very difficult for normal weapons and attacks to cause harm to Uzun's cavalry. The creation of Uzun's armor was time-consuming and laborious, but it also made Uzun's armor last the longest among all the ordinary armors. This protracted armor training had begun a long time ago. Now on the vast plateau, groups upon groups of weapons and armors were piled up together, forming a magnificent sight on this vast land. Flap flap. High up in the sky, wings flapped, and a pigeon as white as snow flew down through the thick smoke and sparks. Above the ground, a middle-aged scholar dressed in a white robe that touched the ground looked up, and allowed the carrier pigeon to land on his hand. Ha ha ha, Huishu, it's finally begun. Dalawan Ruozan faintly smiled as he flicked his finger, sending the letter flying out. The thin piece of paper in his hand was like a sharp blade, flying out at lightning speed. Clang! Not far away, General Huishu Wuzong of the Uzun Empire's Ngari royal lineage was standing in front of a small mountain of Uzun weapons. Seeing the letter fly over, he threw away the weapon in his hand and easily caught it. Jelifeng has come to ask us to send troops again. Huishu Huaitsong finished reading the letter in his hand, as if he had expected this. Ha ha ha, this is the third letter. Dalawan Ruozan faintly smiled, the corners of his mouth curling into a mocking smile. Ever since Mengshi Zhao had retreated, Jelifeng had been sending letters non-stop, requesting the Uzun Empire to send troops and form an alliance. However, Dalawan Ruozan had stopped all of them. Do you want him back? Huishu Wuzong turned his head and asked expressionlessly. No need. Dalawan Ruozan waved his hand and sneered. Everything that needs to be said has been said. If Mengshi Zhao wants to win the support of our Uzun, then come and show your loyalty. The world has been peaceful for decades. Is the current Tang dynasty as strong as before? Mengshi Zhao is the best test. If the Tang dynasty wins and easily destroys Mengshi Zhao, then it means that the time is not ripe yet. Our plan needs to be delayed. But if the Tang dynasty loses, then it means it is the era of our Uzun. At the last sentence, Dalawan Ruozan slowly raised his head. His gaze swept over the mountains and rivers, looking towards the distant southwest of the Tang dynasty. From the towering Uzun plateau, one could faintly see the billowing dust in the distance. Two steel armies were surging towards each other. Perhaps it is the era of our Uzun. As this thought flitted through Dalawan Ruozan's mind, his eyes gradually turned cold. Whether it was the Mengshi Zhao Empire or the Tang dynasty, they were still no match for the Uzun. In this war in the southwest, the Uzun Empire was certain to be the final winner. As the days passed, Wang Chong calculated the state of the war in the southwest. Although Wang Chong hadn't taken part in the war, he had personally experienced it, so he remembered everything clearly. The future has already changed. The war between the Tang dynasty and Mengshi Zhao has been brought forward by at least half a year. I can only hope that the course of this war will also change, Wang Chong quietly said to himself, his heart filled with worry. Although the gloomy prison was cut off from the rest of the world, and could not hear news from the outside, Wang Chong could sense from the atmosphere that this war in the southwest had attracted the attention of the entire Tang dynasty. The air was suffused with the stench of something burning, and Wang Chong was more worried than anyone else. But Wang Chong still could not leave. The pressure from the Chamberlain of Dependencies and the Court of Judicial Review seemed to be far greater than he had imagined. Several days later, just when Wang Chong was about to reach his limit, a figure appeared in the gloomy prison. It was not his big uncle Wang Chong, but the Tang dynasty's the King of Song. Your Highness! Wang Chong was dumbfounded. In a flash, a very bad feeling welled up in his heart. Wang Chong, I have some very bad news for you. Separated by the bars, the King of Song's complexion was extremely unsightly. The Tang dynasty has lost. Xinyu Zhongtong has lost. What? Rumble. Like a thunderclap, Wang Chong suddenly stood up, his mouth agape in shock. How could this be? Chapter 471. The battle in the southwest was like a clap of thunder that shook the entire capital. While everyone was hoping that the new Annan Protectorate Protector General Xinyu Zhongtong would lead 180,000 Tang dynasty elites to defeat Mengshi Zhao and punish Jelifeng, the battle in the southwest dealt a heavy blow. Emperor Jelifeng of the Mengshi Zhao Empire had mobilized all his forces, leading all 340,000 soldiers of Mengshi Zhao to engage in a decisive battle with the 180,000 Tang dynasty elites of the Annan Protectorate on the plains of the River. The disparity in numbers had resulted in the Annan Protectorate's defeat. The long journey meant that no further information was available for the time being. But the preliminary results were already extremely unsettling. In the northeast, Yuzhou, Anshi's Suye, Longshi's Jishur, and the Yin Mountains of the north, the Tang dynasty had always held the upper hand, or at least the upper hand. But in the southwest, the Tang dynasty had rarely mobilized an army of 180,000 soldiers at a time. Furthermore, losing a battle on such a scale was something that had never happened before. Ever since the imperial court had received the news, it had dispatched hundreds of its most experienced spies to the southwest, traveling day and night to gather more information. And the imperial court was also discussing the issue of reinforcements. Whether it was Anshi, Enong, Anbei, or Longxi, the Tang dynasty was facing a powerful empire, a powerful foe. It was simply impossible to casually withdraw reinforcements. If it acted rashly and revealed a flaw, it would be an even greater crisis. Thus, reinforcements could only be sent from other parts of the interior. The imperial court sent out the second wave of reinforcements 2 days ago. This army is being led by the rising young general of the army Li Jingyi. It totals 60,000 soldiers, and they are carrying a large number of bows, ballistae, weapons, and rations for the southwest. You might not understand Li Jingyi very well, but he's a leading figure of the younger generation in the army. He has participated in many major battles, and his performance is extremely eye-catching. Moreover, he became famous very early on in the army, and his reputation in the army is probably even above that of your big brother, Wang Fu. The King of Song said. The King of Song's expression had always been extremely grave, and when he spoke of the defeat in the southwest, it became even more somber. But when Li Junjing was mentioned, the King of Song's expression was clearly much more relaxed. It was clear that he held Li Junjing in high regard. Wang Chong's complexion turned extremely unsightly. History is repeating itself, Wang Chong murmured. At this moment, he felt an indescribable pain in his heart. How could Li Jingyi not know? Li Jingyi had indeed made a name for himself earlier than his elder brother, Wang Fu. In terms of talent, he was also publicly acknowledged to be formidable. He had first joined the Anqi Protectorate, taking up a post in the distant Suya city to the west. There, his performance had been so dazzling that even Gao Xianji had praised him. Later on, he was transferred to Baiting, where he conquered the Turks many times, his performance even surpassing some of the generals in the army. In the army, Li Jingyi was publicly acknowledged to have the potential to become a great general. The army had also chosen him as a promising leader of the younger generation, one who could replace the likes of Wang Zhongxi and Zhang Shogui, and become the cornerstone of the empire. But no matter how formidable the imperial court was, no matter how talented Li Jingyi was, he could never have imagined that their true opponents were not the people of Mengxi Zhao, not Jelifeng, not Fenjie, but the Uzun Empire's Huashu Wuzong and Daluan Ruozhen. The former was the #1 general of the Uzun Empire's Ngari royal lineage, possessing incredible offensive power. In the past, he had been appointed the invincible great general of the Uzun Empire, second only to the likes of Li Sai. The latter was a famed strategist of the Uzun Empire, possessing unparalleled ability to grasp opportunities. When the two of them worked together, even the 180,000 Tang dynasty elites under Zhangqiu Jinxiong's command would be in grave danger. In his 10-some years in the southwestern protectorate, Zhangqiu Jinxiong had never once attacked the Uzun Plateau. It wasn't that he was worried about Mengxi Zhao taking advantage of the situation, but that he wasn't confident that he would be able to defeat Huashu Wuzong and Daluan Ruozhen, even if he left the south of rosy clouds. Although Li Jingyi was powerful and talented, he couldn't compare to figures of the level of Huashu Wuzong and Daluan Ruozhen, and the soldiers he could muster from the interior were also incapable of dealing with the elite cavalry of the Uzun Empire. In a direct confrontation, Li Jingyi's strength was already lacking, and he had been completely unprepared. One could easily imagine the fate that awaited him. Wang Chong had never imagined that the tragedy that had occurred back then would repeat itself. "Your Highness!" Just as Wang Chong opened his mouth, a voice suddenly rang out. "A turning point in the world. A major event. Uzun has intervened in the war between Tang and Mengxi Zhao. The Tang dynasty has been defeated, with 80,000 soldiers remaining. From now on, user is forbidden from revealing any information related to Uzun. From now on, if the army of the Southwestern Protectorate falls below 10,000 soldiers within 2 months, user will be considered to have failed the mission and will be killed. If the army of the Southwestern Protectorate is completely wiped out, user will be considered to have failed the mission and will be killed as well. User will not leave any traces in this world, including the memories of others. The countdown begins now." Wang! A jolt of electricity coursed through Wang Chong's body, causing him to tremble in shock. He couldn't utter a single word of what he wanted to say. "Wang Chong, what's wrong?" the King of Song asked with concern. Wang Chong's complexion didn't look too good. "It's nothing." The pale-faced Wang Chong shook his head, his mind in disarray. Xingyu Zhongtong had been defeated. Not in battle but in utter defeat. The Uzun had intervened in the war much earlier than he had expected. The 180,000 elites of the Tang dynasty were already no match for the 340,000 elites of the Mengxi Zhao Empire. Now that there were more than 200,000 cavalry from the Uzun Ngari royal lineage, the fate of Xingyu Zhongtong and the 180,000 elites of the Tang dynasty could be easily imagined. "I didn't think that it would still be too late." Wang Chong's heart sank to the bottom. Of the 180,000 elites of the Tang dynasty, only 80,000 were left. The death toll had reached more than 100,000. The Annan Protectorate had finally suffered an unprecedented blow since its founding. When the last 80,000 elites of the Tang dynasty were annihilated by the combined might of Mengshi Zhao and the Uzun Empire, the 180,000 elites of the Tang dynasty, the Annan Protectorate would become the first protectorate in the history of the empire to be disbanded because of war. But only Wang Chong knew that this was only the beginning. Without the 180,000 elites of the Tang dynasty guarding the gates of the Tang dynasty, the millions of citizens of the Tang dynasty at the southwestern gate would be reduced to bones under the hooves of the iron hooves. And the eastern and western Turks, Goguryeo, the Abbasid Caliphate, Charax-Spasinu, the various kingdoms of the western regions, countless foreign countries would be encouraged to move. The borders of the Tang dynasty would no longer have a day of peace. As these countless thoughts flitted through his mind, the various memories of his last life floated to his mind. Gradually, the dazed look in his eyes faded. Wang Chong clenched his fists, his eyes slowly hardening. What had already happened could no longer be changed, but at least he could still fight for the future. If he was still unable to change the past after 2 rebirths, unable to prevent it, and had to watch as this tragedy repeated itself, then what need was there for him to exist? Your Highness, take me away from here, Wang Chong indifferently said as he looked ahead, his voice tinged with a unique tone. The King of Song stared blankly at Wang Chong in surprise. The current Wang Chong looked very different from usual, but he couldn't say what was different. It was as if something special was being released from his body. But King Song still quickly gave a grunt of acknowledgement and nodded. Taking Wang Chong away had always been his goal. Boom. Chapter 472. The area outside the government office was in chaos. Only when he walked outside did Wang Chong realize just how chaotic the capital was. The bustling and peaceful capital of the past was now much quieter. There were fewer hawkers on the streets and everyone was in a hurry. Instead of talking about trade, they talked about Xinyu Zhongtong, Annan Protectorate, Uzun, Jelifeng, and other such names that one would rarely hear even once in several years. But the air was suffused with a sense of impatience and unease. It had been far too long since the Tang dynasty had suffered such a defeat. The defeat of 180,000 elites of the Tang dynasty was enough to affect the empire. At this moment, it wasn't just the people of the capital who were paying attention. Even the generals of the army, the ministers of the imperial court, and the important ministers on the border were paying attention to this war. Everything seemed so familiar. Young master. A familiar voice came from next to him. The eagle was standing on the street outside the government office. Next to him a carriage drawn by 4 horses. It was clear that he had been waiting for a long time. But Wang Chong did not immediately get on the carriage. Pass on my 3 orders. Wang Chong extended 3 fingers, his eyes looking forward with a profound gaze that seemed to peer into the depths of space-time. First, immediately dispatch the guards of the clan to all the tea houses and taverns in the capital, and hire all the experts of the true martial realm and above. No matter how noble or lowly, strong or weak, or how high the price, hire them all. Wang Chong said. Yes, young master. The eagle stared blankly for a moment before rejoicing. This encounter, and more than half a month of imprisonment, had not weakened his will. The Wang Chong before him was still the calm and wise young master he remembered. Moreover, every time he issued this series of orders, it meant that he was about to make a major move. It was clear that his young master was about to take action. Young master, is it related to the war in the southwest? The eagle probed. While the entire empire was still unaware of the war in the southwest, only Wang Chong and the eagle were aware of it. While the entire empire was still discussing what to do, Wang Chong had already taken action. Although Wang Chong didn't understand why they were selling spirit veins, the eagle could guess what they were. Wang Chong neither nodded nor shook his head. Although it seemed ambiguous, the eagle, who had always been by his side and was very familiar with him, had already guessed what was going on. The war in the southwest had shaken the entire empire, causing everyone to be extremely worried. Ever since the establishment of the Tang dynasty, the crushing defeat of Annan Protector General Xinyu Zhongtong was a huge blow to the Han, who had always believed that the Tang dynasty was unstoppable. Although an individual's ability was limited in a war, not to mention a teenager, the eagle always believed that his young master could do something. Perhaps others might not be able to do it, but their young master would definitely be able to. This sort of thing had happened many times in the past. Second, summon the 4 great swordsmithing clans, as well as all the sword shops and smiths in the capital, as well as all the swordsmiths, grandmaster swordsmiths, and inscription masters. Tell them that the Wang clan will buy out all the weapons of their clans. For the next 3 months, all the weapons they produce will belong to me. Buzz. The eagle raised his head and stared in shock at Wang Chong. There were more than 1,000 sword shops and smiths in the capital, and with the addition of the 4 great swordsmithing clans, buying out all the weapons produced by these shops and smiths for the next 3 months would require an astonishing sum. Yes, young master. Although he was shocked, the eagle still immediately agreed. Third, summon Zhao Jingdian, Wei Anfang, Zhao Qiqin and Huang Qianer. Tell them to come see me at the Wang residence tonight. Yes, young master. The eagle immediately replied. At this moment, the eagle no longer had any doubts. With these 3 orders, Wang Chong's image of a decisive and murderous man overlapped with his own. There were some people who could not be judged by age, and they would not be weakened by their circumstances. It was clear that Wang Chong was one such person. Have you prepared the brush, ink and paper? Wang Chong said, not noticing the change in the eagle's expression. Yes, young master. It's in the carriage, the eagle deferentially said. Wang Chong nodded and said nothing more. Your Highness, please. Only then did Wang Chong turn around and extend his right palm to the King of Song. The King of Song's carriage was parked nearby. Upon receiving Wang Chong's invitation, the King of Song's face froze, a hint of surprise in his eyes. All right. The surprise soon faded. In just a moment, the King of Song returned to normal. He nodded, lifted his robes and stepped into the carriage. Wang Chong followed closely behind. With a whoosh, he let down the curtain and stepped into the carriage. Let's go. The carriage set off quickly. No one knew what Wang Chong and the King of Song discussed inside. A majestic force burst out from inside, instantly isolating the eagle's senses. No one knew what happened next. The eagle only knew that when the King of Song walked out of the carriage, his expression was very ugly. After the King of Song left, the carriage regained its peace. Half a month's time. Only half a month's time at most. Whether I succeed or not depends on this half a month. In the carriage, Wang Chong's eyes glistened. He quickly unfolded a piece of paper, pressed it down with a paperweight, dipped a pen in ink with his right hand, and started writing. The first letter was written by Wang Chong to his father, Wang Yan, and his elder brother Wang Fu. Xin Yu Zhongtong was a typical general who defended a city. Furthermore, he was a stickler for form and lacked variety. He was only suitable for defending a city in battle. Furthermore, his talents were not suitable for commanding an army of 180,000, let alone dealing with top-notch opponents like Huashu Wuzong, Daluan Ruozhen, Jelifeng, and Duan Gichuan. In his previous life, Xin Yu Zhongtong had been defeated by them. The 180,000 soldiers struggled and resisted with all their might, but only managed to save Xin Yu Zhongtong's life. To save the remaining 80,000 generals and preserve the strength of the Tang dynasty as much as possible, Wang Chong could only trust his father and elder brother. Father and elder brother, Wang Chong presents. Wang Chong's head was slightly lowered, his chest agitated. The brush moved like lightning across the paper, writing line after line of heavy characters. Other than Wang Chong himself, no one knew that the fate of the Southwest and the lives of the remaining 80,000 soldiers would be decided in these lines of regular script. Flap flap. After the first letter was written, a messenger pigeon soared into the sky, flying toward the southwest. After writing the first letter, Wang Chong didn't hesitate to write a second, a third, a fourth. Some of these letters flew to the southwest, some to the southeast, some to the inside of the city, some to the outside. Eagle after eagle, magpie, and messenger pigeon flew down from the sky, landing on the roof of the carriage, and then flying off in all directions, carrying the snow-like letters with them. Other than Wang Chong, not even the nearby eagle knew what was written in these letters. Young master, HAA. Seeing Wang Chong's solemn and focused expression, Eagle gave a long sigh. His heart ached, but he wisely chose not to disturb him. Chapter 473. The first day in the capital was destined to be difficult to calm down. Whoosh! Messenger pigeons flew in all directions in the city. On a mountain range over 10 li away from the city, a slightly plump young figure was currently cultivating with his eyes closed. Surging stellar energy shot out from his body, turning into thick white pillars of qi. They coiled around his body like huge pythons, making the youth's aura seem extremely powerful. Receiving the messenger pigeon, Wei Hao had a look of astonishment in his eyes. Then he tore open the letter and started reading. Ha ha ha, Wang Chong, you bastard. You finally came to look for me. Pung. Clenching his fist, the letter in his hand shattered into pieces. Youngster Wei suddenly burst out laughing excitedly. There wasn't much content in the letter that Wang Chong had given him. There were only a few simple sentences. Lend me 20 guards. What were 20 guards to a childhood friend who had grown up with him? Even if the Wei residence's rules were strict, even if he had to take the risk of being reprimanded by his father, youngster Wei would definitely help Wang Chong. What 20? Even if it was 200, he would think of a way to help him. Boom! The air trembled, emitting a metallic sound. Beneath youngster Wei, an obsidian-like halo of thorns shot out majestically. Following that, it was 2, 3, 4. In a short period of time, youngster Wei's aura had broken through from the essence Qi realm to the true martial realm. Then from the first level of the true martial realm, second level, third level, all the way to the fourth level of the true martial realm. It even showed signs of breaking through to the fifth level of the true martial realm. At this moment, youngster Wei's aura was majestic and filled with boundless strength. The strength of his aura even surpassed that of Wang Chong. This was the might of the mountain ascension art. This cultivation technique of youngster Wei was given to him by Wang Chong, and it was a top-notch technique with extremely powerful might. The mountain ascension art was extremely difficult to cultivate, and it had a very high requirement for one's physique. Especially at the essence Qi realm, it was even more difficult. But once one broke through to the true martial realm, its might would be incomparably powerful. Ever since youngster Wei entered the Kunhua training camp, Wang Chong rarely went to look for him. Whether it was dealing with the Gogrian assassins or dealing with Yaoyuoshan, Wang Chong had never called him over. His goal was to have him focus on cultivation. Wang Chong would do his best to help this childhood friend of his. The golden ginsengs he obtained from the Gogurians were at least 100 years old. After Wang Chong reached the true martial realm, he did not use it much. However, with youngster Wei, Wang Chong had always provided it to him without any restrictions. The mountain ascension formula was different from other cultivation techniques. The effects of the Gogrian ginseng on him were far greater than that of Wang Chong's. Furthermore, it was extremely difficult for the mountain ascension art to break through from the essence energy rank to the true martial realm. However, if he had the Gogrian ginseng, he would be able to achieve greater results with half the effort. Currently, the amount of Gogrian ginseng that youngster Wei had consumed was at least 20 to 30 times that of Wang Chong. Moreover, even though Wang Chong forbade others from getting close to the spirit vein, youngster Wei could freely ascend and descend the mountain to cultivate. However, after reaching the true martial realm, the mountain ascension formula no longer required simple origin energy of heaven and earth. Instead, it required the mountain essence energy of a higher level. This sort of thing was different from any other origin energy of heaven and earth. Under normal circumstances, it was extremely difficult to cultivate without a unique cultivation technique like the mountain ascension formula. Thus, after reaching the true martial realm, youngster Wei left the spirit vein and entered the depths of the mountain range. The more primitive the surrounding mountains were, the more numerous they were, and the more inaccessible they were, the denser the essence Qi of the mountains. Youngster Wei was a martial arts fanatic to begin with, and he was crazy about it. When he cultivated, there was no difference between day and night, day and night. In addition, he did not have to worry about miscellaneous matters like Wang Chong. Together with a martial art like the mountain ascension formula, he was a match made in heaven. Thus, youngster Wei's current level of cultivation was even higher than Wang Chong's. Compared to his last life, youngster Wei had undoubtedly reached a level that he could never have reached in his previous life. Something must have happened for Wang Chong to borrow guards from me. I have to go and take a look. A gleam flashed in youngster Wei's eyes as he suddenly stood up. With a swoosh, he leaped out like a monkey, covering over 10 meters with a single step. In just a few leaps, youngster Wei was like a fierce tiger or elephant, vanishing from the mountain range. At the same time, in another part of the capital, there was a 3-story tea house with high eaves and ancient decorations that exuded an air of elegance and grandeur. A beautiful figure furrowed her brows. Her slender porcelain fingers held a 5-inch tall celadone teacup. She seemed to have a lot on her mind. Flap flap. The sound of wings flying through the air could be heard. A hint of surprise flashed through Bai Siling's eyes as she subconsciously raised her head. He saw a snow-white messenger pigeon spread its wings, drew an arc in the air, swept over the high eaves of the tea house, and flew towards him. Bai Siling froze for a moment, then subconsciously stretched out her arm to catch the pigeon. It's him! Opening the letter and seeing the familiar and crooked handwriting, Bai Siling's creased brows suddenly began to unfurl like ink. The worries of the past few days had melted away, and Bai Siling's lips perked up into a smile like the blossoming of a flower. I just knew that the prison wouldn't be able to hold you. Bai Siling gave a confident smile. Picking up the teacup on the table, she took a light sip, feeling the lingering fragrance on her lips. With the worry in her heart finally put to rest, Bai Siling felt much more relaxed. As for the contents of Wang Chong's letter, she didn't care much about it. Putting down the teacup, Bai Siling took light steps and swiftly left the tea house. 20 true martial realm experts. Wang Chong, you really aren't one to be left out. In the training grounds of the Su clan, a pigeon perched on Su Gan's shoulder. One of his hands was holding onto a red spear made of white poplar, and the other was holding onto the letter written by Wang Chong. You've just been released from the prison, and you're already asking for soldiers? Are you going to make a move again? The southwest. Su Gan raised his head slightly, and his deep gaze seemed to peer into the depths of time and space. Su Gan had always felt deep respect for Wang Chong, who was even younger than him. Wang Chong's way of thinking, Wang Chong's actions, and his boldness and ambition were all things that Su Gan had always felt inferior to. Su Gan was glad that he had met Wang Chong during the mission in the training camp. The scions of the great clans, especially those of the direct line of descent, were all proud and arrogant, but Su Gan had never felt the same way about Wang Chong. If there was one person in the entire capital that he admired from the bottom of his heart, it could only be Wang Chong. Whoosh! With a flick of his wrist, the red-tasseled great spear in his hand let out an ear-piercing whistle, like a thick and heavy flood dragon. With a whoosh, it accurately landed on the weapons rack 60 to 70 feet away. Let's go. Last time, it was Zhang Shogui and biting Vice Protector General in Sishan. I wonder who's following me this time. Following him, I really don't have to worry about wasting my life. Wiping the sweat off his neck with a towel, Su Gan strode out of the training grounds. Haha, as expected of someone that I, Zhao Yadong, admire. Nothing can stop you. Chapter 474. Flap Flap. One carrier pigeon after another flew to various places in the capital. All the great clans and nobles of the capital that had existed for decades or even centuries, whether they knew them or not, received Wang Chong's letter. Father, what do you think the Wang clan is up to? In the remote Duke of Lu residence, Li Bing gripped the crooked letter in his hand, his brow deeply furrowed. It would have been fine if it were anyone else, but we had a conflict with him last time. That Su Han's Han. Just what is he up to? The Duke of Lu lineage had already withdrawn from the system of the imperial court long ago, and it could be said that it had no authority at all. It only enjoyed the treatment of a duke, and it could not compare to a clan of ministers and generals like the Wang clan. One could say that the Duke of Lu lineage was of no help to the Wang clan. Moreover, The two sides had even had a disagreement over the matter of Su Han's Han. Although the two sides had reconciled, this matter was not so easily resolved. The hall was quiet. Duke of Lu was silent, his brow furrowed even deeper than Li Bing's. If the relationship between the Li clan and the Wang clan had reached such a level, then no matter what request Wang Chong made, the Li clan would definitely agree to it. But truthfully speaking, both Duke of Lu and Li Bing felt that the sudden letter from Wang Chong requesting for experts was very abrupt. Binger, the Wang clan is finally no longer an ordinary clan, and that Wang Chong is a golden fish that has fallen into the water. In the end, he's no longer a fish in a small pond. No matter what he wants to do, since you've received his letter, send a few people to take a look. Moreover, this truly is an opportunity to befriend the Wang clan. But remember that Su Han's Han. Do your best to avoid meeting him. Yes, your child understands. I'll do it now. Li Bing lowered his head and quickly left. Just what is this Qilin son of the Wang clan up to? If Duke of Lu had only found it abrupt, then Duke of Su was finding it hard to understand why Wang Chong would send a letter. If I remember correctly, the King of Song must have forcefully suppressed the Supreme Court and the Chamberlain of Dependencies, releasing Wang Chong. At this time, why does he suddenly want to borrow guards from me? Duke Su was over 40 years old. He had a full beard and looked rather dignified. Father, don't worry about him. That Wang Chong is not a good person at all. Last time, he greatly humiliated us, and now he wants to borrow our guards. Just ignore him. Bastard, he must be up to something again. Before Duke of Su could speak, Su Bai, who was standing by the side, immediately shouted. Also, father, have you forgotten? Last time, I almost died in prison because of him. Bastard, I haven't even talked about you yet. Speak. Have you been causing trouble for me again recently? Duke Su turned around and scolded. Dad, I'm innocent. I didn't do anything. Su Bai cried out in grievance. He truly had been wrongly accused. He had been fooling around in a tea house when his father had sent guards to kidnap him. To tell the truth, Su Bai had been scared half to death that Wang Chong had sent a letter to the Duke Su residence. Even more shocked than his father. Didn't do anything? If he didn't do anything, why would he send a letter to our Duke Su residence? Unfilial son, remember this. I don't care about anyone else in the capital. As for that Wang Chong, no matter how great your grudge was with him, stay as far away from him as possible. Duke Su harshly rebuked. Why? Isn't that brat relying on the fact that he has the King of Song to help him? Otherwise, given the trouble he's caused, he's dead for sure. Su Bai angrily yelled. Humph, you also know that he's dead for all the trouble he's caused. Then why don't you think about why he can't die? Who are Zhang Shogui and Insist Hun? One is the Anong Protector General, and the other is the Biting Vice Protector General. Both of them are great generals of the empire. You can't even provoke one of them, much less two of them. If the King of Song releases Wang Chong, it's fine if the others don't say anything. But do you think that Zhang Shogui and Insist Hun don't dare to say anything? Although the status of the great generals of the empire is lower than that of an imperial prince of the Tang dynasty, they don't need to worry too much. Why don't they say anything? Su Bai's mouth fell open, and then he froze. It was true that the King of Song had released Wang Chong from prison. The others could be ignored. But what about Zhang Shogui and Insist Hun? Others might be afraid of the King of Song, but they might not be afraid of him, right? If his father had not brought it up, Su Bai would have never considered this question. Father, you mean? Su Bai gazed at his father and asked in bewilderment. If it weren't for His Majesty's will, do you think that Zhang Shogui and Insist Hun would let this matter go? The regional commander's incident was such a major affair that the entire court was in an uproar. But they couldn't do anything to him. This time, all he did was kill a few people under Zhang Shogui and in Sichuan's command. Do you really think that anything will happen? Zhang Shogui has always been praised for his clear-mindedness, his 8 apertures open. If he hadn't figured out His Majesty's intentions, he would never have let this matter go. As for Insist Hun, although he's a Hu and doesn't have many thoughts, he's loyal and devoted to His Majesty. Do you think that a Hu like him managed to become Biting Vice Protector General by luck? It's one thing for the others, but he clearly understands His Majesty's intentions. And Sishun must have received His Majesty's orders to understand the will of the heavens. That's why the King of Song was able to release Wang Chong so smoothly, Duke Su indifferently said. There was no way he would let Wang Chong off so easily. However, having worked in the imperial court for many years, he had a clear understanding of all sorts of political struggles. If one wanted to remain in the political world for a long time, one had to have a keen sense for politics. Su Bai was dumbstruck, unable to say a single word. He only knew that the King of Song had gone to save Wang Chong, but he had no idea that there was so much more to the story. The inner workings of the imperial court were far more complicated than he had imagined. Send a few people. Let's see what he's up to first, Duke Su said with a wave of his hand. Similar events were taking place in various parts of the city at almost the same time. It wasn't just the Bai clan and the Su clan that had some sort of relationship with Wang Chong. Even noble clans like Duke Lu and Duke Su, who didn't have much of a relationship with the Wang clan, had received invitations. Other than the Yao clan and King Qi, which were sworn enemies of the Wang clan, almost all the other clans with some status in the capital had received invitations. The entire capital had been mobilized by Wang Chong's letters. No one knew what Wang Chong was up to, but there was no question that the letters Wang Chong had written on the carriage back to his residence had once more set the capital abuzz. Chapter 475. Zhao Jingdian, Wei Anfang, Zhao Qiqin, and Huang Qian'er arrived at the Wang clan residence very late at night. The Wang clan residence was brightly lit, and after Wang Chong invited them into his study, he closed the door. No one knew what they were talking about, only that Zhao Jingdian, Wei Anfang, Zhao Qiqin, and Huang Qian'er all had nasty complexions when they came out of Wang Chong's study. The four of them were completely out of sorts, all of them so absent-minded that they didn't even hear the Wang clan guards call for them. They left the Wang clan residence that night, but the light in Wang Chong's study did not go out. After they left, Wang Chong's silhouette on the table was reflected on the paper window, and the rustling of a brush could be heard. But the door was tightly shut, and no one knew what Wang Chong was doing inside. Lion City has long since been constructed, and a large amount of food has already been stored in the city. This is the last chance for Xinyu Zhongtong and the Annan Protectorate Army. In the study, the candles flickered as Wang Chong stared at the table, his expression unprecedentedly grave. On Wang Chong's table was a miniature model of the Southwest. All the valleys, mountains, rivers, plains, cities, and forests, all of them were vivid and lifelike. Wang Chong had borrowed this model from the Bureau of Military Personnel a long time ago and found skilled craftsmen to make it. In the Tang dynasty, everything that involved the geography of the mountains, rivers, and even the defensive positions of the garrisons were classified secrets. Secretly keeping such a model was a major crime, but Wang Chong had never cared, and this model had always been hidden in his study. The defeat of the Annan Protectorate Army in the southwest was already a foregone conclusion. The past could no longer be changed, but there was still hope. If nothing unexpected happens and everything is still the same, then the battle between Xinyu Zhongtong and Jelifeng will definitely take place on these plains. Wang Chong stared at the model, countless thoughts flitting through his mind. At this moment, he didn't look like a young and inexperienced teenager at all. In a daze, Wang Chong had once again reverted to the great Tang commander-in-chief from his previous life, a man with the sun and moon in his chest, commanding an army of thousands, commanding a mighty army with a flick of his finger, and deciding the outcome of a battle. Whoosh! Wang Chong took out a small flag and stuck it into the awry plain on the sand table. As the war saint, revered by the world in his previous life, Wang Chong had experienced thousands of battles, big and small. Even Wang Chong himself couldn't count them all. Even a layman who didn't know anything would be a good commander if he could survive thousands of battles, let alone Wang Chong. As long as Jelifeng wasn't an idiot and Duan Gichuan was still the commander, then the location of their decisive battle would definitely be the Arai Plains. Only the Arai Plain could accommodate so many soldiers. In his previous life, it wasn't without reason that the Tang dynasty and Mengshi Zhao chose that place for their decisive battle. And if the decisive battle was held there, as long as Xinyu Zhongtong wasn't completely muddle-headed, as long as he was still a normal person, then he would definitely be able to see this place. Wang Chong took out a small red flag as thick as a toothpick and stuck it into the Lion City, behind the Arai Plains without hesitation. Wang Chong hadn't been to the Lion City yet, so he didn't know what this city that cost him millions of taels of gold looked like. But with Zhang Shouji's ability, once it was built, Wang Chong didn't hesitate. This magnificent city would definitely be the most prominent existence near the Arai Plains. Even if it was hundreds of miles away, it would definitely be able to discover this Lion City, forged from steel and iron. This Lion City was built by Wang Chong for himself, and at the same time, it was also built by Wang Chong for the 180,000 Tang dynasty soldiers. This was their only hope of survival. In his previous life, the 180,000 Tang dynasty soldiers had nowhere to hide after the Battle of Arai, and the infantry definitely couldn't outrun the cavalry. That was why the 180,000 Tang dynasty elite soldiers were completely annihilated. Except for Xinyu Zhongtong, who barely escaped with his life, the rest of the army was completely annihilated. But Wang Chong's Lion City became the only chance of survival for the 180,000 Tang dynasty soldiers. Wang Chong was almost certain that the remaining 80,000 Tang dynasty soldiers had definitely escaped into the Lion City. Otherwise, the 180,000 Tang dynasty elites would have been completely annihilated, and Wang Chong would have been obliterated by the Stone of Destiny because he had failed in his mission. But Wang Chong knew very well that a single Lion City would definitely not be able to change the fate of the remaining 80,000 soldiers and the situation of the entire Southwest. There was no city in the world that could not be breached, and this Lion City was no different. The 300,000 Mengshi Zhao army that Jelifeng had built with the strength of the entire nation, together with the 200,000 soldiers of the Uzun Empire's Ngari royal lineage in the southeast, was definitely enough to break through any city. There was no way that the Lion City would be able to hold out for too long. The Lion City that Wang Chong had spent an enormous sum of money to build could only provide the remaining 80,000 Tang dynasty soldiers with a temporary respite. This respite would not last long. Moreover, even if Lion City was sturdy and impregnable, it could not last for too long. Although Wang Chong had already stored a large amount of rations in the city, this little bit of rations was definitely not enough for the 80,000 soldiers of the Tang dynasty, who had to fight day and night, ready to go to the battlefield at any moment. Before the troops and horses move, the rations and fodder must move first. Without sufficient rations, the army would collapse on its own. If he wanted to save the remaining 80,000 Tang dynasty soldiers and change the course of the Southwest, he had to act before the rations ran out. There was not much time left for Wang Chong. Wang Chong's gaze swept over the sand table, over the geography of the Southwest. The 300,000 Mengshi Zhao army and the 200,000 Uzun army of the Ngari royal lineage was not a force that a trifling 80,000 soldiers could resist. Even if his father and Li Jingyi's tens of thousands of soldiers were added together, it would still not be enough. But Wang Chong had no choice. Moreover, although it was not easy to defeat many with fewer, it was not impossible, at least for Wang Chong. As long as one made good use of the geography and terrain, and added appropriate tactics, it was not impossible in the art of war. In this world, no one understood the meaning of these words better than Wang Chong. Wang Chong was searching for this geography and terrain. Swish, swish, swish. One small banner after another fell from Wang Chong's hand, landing on various places on the sand table. Hills, forests, rivers, mountains. All the places where the small banners had been inserted were projected into Wang Chong's mind. The sand table was empty. Nothing had happened. But in Wang Chong's mind, thousands upon thousands of soldiers were roiling about. Mengshi Zhao's army, Uzun's army, and the Tang army trapped in Lion City. All of this seemed to have a life of its own as it played out in Wang Chong's mind. This was Wang Chong's first time using psychic energy to deduce the changes in the War of the Southwest. Deduction of soldiers was a skill that any commander had to possess. But even the most formidable commander could only deduce tens or hundreds of thousands of soldiers. No one had ever been like Wang Chong, able to mentally deduce a massive war of 700,000 soldiers. Moreover, this war involved famous generals and great generals like Jelifeng, Fin Jie, Duan Gichuan, Daluan Ruozhen, and Huishu Wuzong. The tactics of famous generals and great generals were unfathomable. If someone were to see what Wang Chong was doing, they would assuredly be dumbstruck. This was because in order to deduce top-class figures, like Huishu Wuzong and Daluan Ruozhen, one had to have an extremely deep understanding of their opponents, and one had to completely surpass them in terms of strategy. Only in this way could one smoothly deduce. But what Wang Chong was doing was precisely this sort of thing. Chapter 476. Buzz. Wang Chong's mind continued to run simulations. The positions of the red flags kept changing as he plucked them out one by one. In the end, when everything in his mind had settled down, the number of red flags in his mind had also been reduced to a bare minimum. There were only 7 or 8 flags left. 80,000 soldiers, half infantry and half cavalry, and a phalanx of sharpshooters. We can't escape from Uzun's warhorses. If a battle is inevitable, this will be the place. Wang Chong muttered to himself. Finally, he extended his finger and drew a circle on the sand table in the southwest direction. Even though the surroundings were silent, Wang Chong knew that this would be the place of the final battle. The 80,000 soldiers of the Tang dynasty and the fate of the Tang dynasty would most likely be decided in this area. Considering all the factors, distance, speed, and rations, this would be the last hope of the Annam Protectorate. I'll do my best and leave the rest to fate. The rest will depend on luck. Wang Chong thought to himself. It was as if a huge stone had been lifted from his heart. One wrong step leads to many wrong steps. In a war, predicting the enemy's moves was the most basic prerequisite. Facing top-notch generals like Huishu Wuzong and Duan Gichuan, trying to determine the location of the battle in advance, lure them over, and make preparations was something unimaginable for most people. But for Wang Chong, he had encountered stronger enemies before. None of this was a problem. Although reincarnation lowered his cultivation, it did not affect his instincts and attainments in the art of war. Time passed slowly. Wang Chong's pen moved quickly. The map on his desk grew thicker and thicker. War was never a simple matter of reasoning. It was much more complicated than this. Wang Chong had to be prepared for everything. No matter what the situation was, he could deal with it. The Eagle sent 3 people to these 3 locations. I want them to investigate in detail, then draw out a map of the terrain and give it to me. After an unknown amount of time, Wang Chong finally opened the door to the study with a pale face. He walked in somewhat weakly. In his hands there were a few blueprints. Yes, young master. The Eagle took the blueprint and glanced at Wang Chong's slightly sunken black eye circles. His eyes couldn't help but waver. How's the matter of bribing all the sword shops and smiths in the capital for 3 months? How's it going to go? Wang Chong said. In addition to the time he spent in the dark prison, Wang Chong had not had a good rest for a long time. Even so, Wang Chong didn't feel sleepy in the slightest. Instead, his eyes were bright and full of expression, as if he had boundless energy. Replying to young master, we have already sent out the guards in the mansion. However, time was still very short. It hadn't been a long time since the young master came out. Even though we've contacted quite a number of sword shops and smiths, they haven't made their stance clear yet. We should need some time before we can get their reply. The Eagle lowered his head and said sincerely, even though he had been by Wang Chong's side. Ever since he returned yesterday, he had been executing the things that Wang Chong had said. However, unlike the average person, the Eagle didn't move, but his messenger pigeons and various eagles never stopped. However, involving so many sword shops and smiths, it wasn't something that could be done in a short period of time. One night's time was obviously not enough. Moreover, the real negotiation, signing of the contract, and going to the Supreme Court to be notarized also required time. If you need time, then the price is too low. Wang Chong sneered. Even though he was young, he wasn't a 3-year-old kid. In a place like the capital, if the deal couldn't be done quickly, it meant that the bargaining chips weren't enough. The Eagle, let me ask you, how much money did you raise when I asked you to auction off the spirit vein? Wang Chong asked. With his hands behind his back, his long hair and robes danced in the wind. His body naturally exuded the aura of an aristocratic family's scion, yet it didn't lose the masculine aura of a military family. Young master, even if you didn't ask, I would have told you. 1/3 of the spirit vein's mountain has been sold, and we've raised 1.8 billion taels of gold. 1.8 billion taels of gold. Wang Chong took a deep breath, his face full of shock. Even though he was the one who started it, Wang Chong couldn't believe his ears, because this number was far beyond his expectations. Yes, young master. The price of the auction was much higher than our initial estimate. However, even though it's 1.8 billion taels of gold, the actual amount isn't that much. When we started the auction, the aristocratic families didn't have so much money. Therefore, a large portion of the money was paid by the families using their family's assets or other treasures. The Eagle said apologetically, the spirit vein was a priceless treasure, and any family that obtained it would view it as a treasure. But unexpectedly, in the hands of Wang Chong, it was tossed aside like a shoe, and he took it out for auction. The aristocratic families in the capital went crazy. However, the price of the spirit vein was still very high, and it wasn't something that ordinary families could afford. Thus, most of the spirit veins were auctioned off using gold, as well as the family's assets. However, even so, it was still a huge number. How much is left? Wang Chong asked. Around 200 million taels of gold. The Eagle replied. This number was a little different from what he had reported initially, but he had no other choice. The Wang clan didn't have any decent, large-scale businesses. They weren't like the other clans, who had an endless supply of assets and income. Old Eagle had only thought of this method after starting from this point of view. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to collect so much gold. Even the Eagle didn't know Wang Chong's true motive. 200 million taels is more than enough, Wang Chong said calmly. His gaze was calm, and he seemed to have a card up his sleeves. Take out 100 million taels, and have the guards of the clan bring the gold to those swordsmiths and shops to negotiate with them. I want to hear their reply after today. Also, use the remaining 100 million taels to help me find the swordsmithing clans and swordsmiths around the capital. Even though their smithing abilities can't compare up to the swordsmiths and swordsmiths in the capital, they are more than enough to forge what I want, Wang Chong said without hesitation, his expression calm. The Eagle stared at Wang Chong in shock and he hesitated. 200 million taels of gold was the result of the Wang clan selling the spirit vein. What Wang Chong was doing now was using money to pave the way. This was much more disadvantageous than under normal circumstances. Yes, Gongzi. Old Eagle wanted to say something but hesitated. He wanted to say something to stop Wang Chong, but he changed his mind. Wang Chong's will was firm, and it seemed like it wouldn't change. It was clear that nothing he said would be of any use. Wang Chong nodded. Have all the great clans of the capital been informed? When will they come? According to Gongzi's wishes, they have all been informed. They should arrive in around 4 hours. The Eagle said. I understand. I'll go in and work for a while. Inform me when they arrive. After which, Wang Chong turned around and walked in. Yes, Gongzi. The Eagle's voice came from behind him, but in the next moment, pung. A powerful force struck a major acupoint on his back. Wang Chong's body jolted, and like a punctured ball, all the strength in his body vanished. A powerful wave of fatigue swept through him. The Eagle. Wang Chong's body went limp. This was the last thought in his mind. Gongzi, I've offended you. You really need a good rest. If you go on like this, I'm afraid you'll collapse. The Eagle supported Wang Chong's body and let out a long sigh. Ever since he had entered the prison, Wang Chong had been in high spirits. He didn't seem tired at all, but the Eagle knew that he was in a state of extreme exhaustion. It wasn't just physical exhaustion. A martial artist's body was much stronger than an ordinary person's. What worried the eagle the most was Wang Chong's mental state. Since half a month ago, Wang Chong's brain had been operating at full speed. The eagle had seen him a few times. He had been writing and drawing in the prison. Even though he couldn't understand what Wang Chong was writing, the eagle could guess that it had something to do with the southwest of the empire. A person's body would not be so exhausted. If Wang Chong continued like this, the eagle was worried that he would run out of energy. Rest well, Gongzi. Leave the rest to me. Chapter 477. Wang Chong woke up 4 hours later. Gongzi, the clans have arrived. A familiar voice sounded by his ear. Opening his eyes, Wang Chong immediately saw the eagle standing by his bed. His body bowed respectfully. Wang Chong was taken aback, and then he smiled bitterly in understanding. The eagle, I know you meant well, but don't do it again. Yes, Gongzi. The eagle understands. The eagle did not talk back. Wang Chong smiled bitterly, not dwelling on this matter. The eagle had a good personality, and Wang Chong knew that it was for his own good. However, time was tight, and there were too many things to do. How could he rest so easily? Where are the people from the clans? Wang Chong asked. In the main hall. I only came to inform Gongzi after I made arrangements for them. The eagle said. Wang Chong took a deep breath, nodded and quickly left the room. The main hall of the Wang clan was packed with people. The clans of the Wang clan were all gathered here. The Wang clan was a clan of ministers and generals, and its status far surpassed that of the other clans. Ordinary clans could not even step through the gates of the Wang clan. Moreover, under the influence of the old master, the Wang clan was very strict, and they rarely invited other clans into their residence. To the clans of the capital, this was the first time they had been invited into the Wang clan residence. However, at this moment, the atmosphere in the lobby was not harmonious at all. What does the Wang clan want? Why hasn't anyone appeared after so long? Is this how the Wang clan wants to borrow people from us? What borrow? You've agreed, but I haven't. I want to see what right the Wang clan has to make such a request. That's right, that's right. Even if Duke Jiao is famous throughout the world, he can't do this, can he? We don't even have many true martial realm cultivators. So why should we lend them to the Wang clan? And a true martial tier 4 or 5 expert at that. The main hall was bustling with activity, but the atmosphere was not friendly. These bastards. When the eagle came out with Wang Chong, they saw such a scene. The eagle's eyebrows twitched. It's all right. Wang Chong smiled. Just as the eagle was about to beat someone up, he suddenly pulled him back. Unlike the eagle, Wang Chong only needed one glance to know what was going on. Someone is setting the pace, Wang Chong said calmly in his heart. He clearly understood the situation before him. With so many aristocratic families in the capital, it was inevitable that they would be unwilling to lend their precious true martial realm experts to others. But for so many people to work together, to cause a ruckus in the Wang clan's hall, was definitely abnormal. If someone wasn't intentionally causing trouble, there was no way that so many people would be so united in such a manner to denounce him. However, Wang Chong didn't care at all. If he didn't have some confidence in this operation, he would never have dared to do such a thing. He was not only confident that he could convince the great clans of the capital to willingly lend him their experts, even if it was those people who were intentionally causing trouble. Wang Chong was confident that he could completely convince them. In truth, he wouldn't be the one begging them. They would probably be the ones begging him. I've kept everyone waiting. With a wave of his sleeve, Wang Chong and the eagle walked into the hall. It's young master. Young Master Chong has come. Wang Chong's appearance immediately attracted the attention of everyone in the hall. Wang Chong glanced around. There were quite a few people in the room, but compared to the number of people he had invited, it was only a tiny fraction. Furthermore, most of the people who appeared here were not true members of the aristocratic families. Instead, most of them were subordinates of the aristocratic families. No wonder he was so easily instigated by others and used as a tool. Wang Chong quietly said to himself, now fully aware of everything. Young Master Chong. What does young Master Chong want to borrow people for? Young Master Chong, Duke Jiu has always been revered. If the Wang clan has a need, our Li clan will do its utmost to help. However, even we don't have enough true martial tier 4 or 5 experts. Young Master Chong, I truly apologize. Our clan leader hasn't been around in the past few days, so we can't give you a reply. Thus, we sent me here to apologize to young Master Chong. I hope that young master can understand. Young Master Chong. These are 2 deep-sea Xian pearls that represent a small token of our Yu clan's appreciation. As for the matter of 10 true martial realm experts, forgive us for not being able to do it. Our Yu clan also doesn't have enough people, so I'm not sure if 2 true martial realm experts will be enough. Wang Chong coldly watched from the sidelines. All sorts of people had appeared in the hall. There were those who directly refused, those who wanted to refuse, but were wary of the Wang clan's influence. So they found other excuses. And there were also those who wanted to negotiate and reduce the number of people previously. When the eagle had struck his acupuncture point, while he had been unconscious, the measures taken by the person who had secretly set the pace had clearly been effective. But Wang Chong wasn't surprised by this result in the slightest. True martial realm experts were extremely important to the great clans. Moreover, the imperial court had always been extremely strict with the experts of the great clans. Every great clan had people serving in the army, and if there were too many experts in the clan, they would immediately request to be forcibly inducted into the army and put under the control of the army. Thus, the number of experts that the great clans could control had always been limited. Moreover, the experts of the clan were a special resource. They couldn't be casually lent to others like gold or silver. On the contrary, if they met someone with talent and outstanding strength, the various aristocratic families would actively recruit them into their family. How could they possibly lend their experts to others? From the very start, it was very unlikely that anyone would agree to Wang Chong's request. Isn't it just 20 true martial realm tier 4 or 5 guards? I'll borrow 40 of them. Suddenly, just as everyone was trying to find excuses to shirk responsibility, a thunderous roar suddenly entered everyone's ears. In an instant, the entire hall quietened down. Everyone was looking at the straightforward and forthright young man from an aristocratic family. I was wondering who it was. So it's Wei Hao. You and Wang Chong are childhood friends, grew up together, and are brothers who wear the same pants. Of course you'll lend them to him. However, an eccentric voice quickly sounded from the crowd. It was filled with sarcasm. But Wei Hao, I just want to ask you something. You casually asked for 40 true martial realm experts. But do you have them yourself? If I remember correctly, you still have big brother and second brother, right? Have you asked your big brother, second brother, and your father, the Duke of Wei? Chapter 478. Subai sent you here, right? Bastard, since he sent you here, he shouldn't be too far away. Subai, you bastard, get out here. Wei Hao harumphed angrily as he swept his vicious gaze across the crowd. He had no need to be polite to Subai. Since this fellow dared to send someone here to cause trouble, he shouldn't blame him for being impolite. Don't spout nonsense here. Our Gongzi didn't even come here. Besides, the one who invited us is your brother, Wang Chong. What does it have to do with us? The guard from the Duke Su public house sneered and said rudely. The order he received was to disrupt Wang Chong's operation as much as possible. No matter what he did, he couldn't be allowed to succeed. However, even if he didn't know, Duke Su's original intention was for him to take a look and interact with Wang Chong to understand what was going on. However, it was a pity that Su Bai's selfishness got the better of him. He changed the order to disrupt Wang Chong's operation, regardless of the cost. Wang Chong, Su Bai must be up to no good by sending this bastard here. Say the word and I'll chase him out for you. Wei Hao angrily squeezed his way through the crowd and rushed to Wang Chong's side. He and Wang Chong had grown up together, so he knew everything in the Wang residence like the back of his hand. However, Wei Hao was still able to distinguish the occasion. This gathering was initiated by Wang Chong. In such a formal occasion, regardless of whether the other party was welcome or here to cause trouble, only Wang Chong could make the decision. Enough. Wang Chong chuckled lightly as he pulled the furious Wei Hao aside. Calm down. I was the one who invited Duke Su's man. What? Wei Hao, who was still fuming a moment ago, was dumbfounded when he heard those words. He had always thought that Su Bai sent someone here to cause trouble. He didn't expect that it was actually Wang Chong who invited him here. Haven't you always been at odds with him? Why did you invite him over? Wei Hao had a look of disbelief on his face. He had not expected the truth to be like this. Hee, I'll tell you later, Wang Chong said with a smile, but he didn't say anything. The matter in the southwest was a national grudge, but the matter between him and Su Bai, the matter between the Wang clan and the Su clan, was a personal grudge. Compared to what was about to happen in the southwest, what did personal grudges count for? As long as it could be beneficial to what he was about to do, as long as it could help this empire that was in a precarious situation and facing a huge crisis, as well as the millions of people living on this land, everything else was not important to Wang Chong. Humph, Wang Chong, don't bother with this bastard. Isn't it just a dozen or so true martial realm experts? Our Bai family may not have much, but we do have a lot of these experts. All of a sudden, a voice sounded from the crowd, and Bai Siling walked out of the crowd on her tiptoes. Her slender neck was raised high, and she exuded the allure of a young lady. As she walked toward Wang Chong, she even winked at Wang Chong a few times, seemingly carrying a deeper meaning. We were going to look for you, but it just so happens that you were sleeping. Furthermore, Bai Siling said that if you were to bring so many people with you, there would definitely be people who would cause trouble. So, she told us not to rush to meet them, and to sneak over here first. Wei Hao approached Wang Chong and whispered. Even though he rarely stayed in the training camp, he had more or less seen the faces of the people around Wang Chong. He knew of the Bai clan's intelligent and crafty Bai Siling. Hee, if Wang Gongzi needs something, count our Su clan in as well. On the other side, Su Gong cooperated with Bai Siling and walked out of the crowd. He wasn't as high profile as Bai Siling, but he only needed to cooperate from the side. Haha, count us in as well. A fiery cloud flashed by. Zhao Yadong, dressed in red and with a red dot on her forehead, was a bewitching beauty. She lost no time in walking out of the crowd. Buzz, be it the Su clan or the Zhao clan, both of them were influential clans in the capital. Not to mention, Bai Siling's Bai clan was one of the oldest clans in the capital, and in terms of influence, it was on par with the Wang clan. The crowd buzzed with activity as these three clans stepped forward. It was clear that none of them had expected this. Great clans always had their reasons for doing things. If it wasn't beneficial, they would never do something like this. For many clans, when they were hesitating, they only needed to look at the actions of the most influential clans. Without a doubt, the appearance of Bai Siling, Zhao Yadong and Su Gong, as well as their powerful support, had a major impact on the crowd. Some of the smaller clans were also moved. Wait a moment. If I'm not wrong, Bai Siling, Zhao Yadong, Su Gong, all of you are Wang Chong's friends. If you want to help him, there's no problem. But we don't need it. The Duke of Su's bodyguard hurriedly shouted. Furthermore, those who can appear here, which family isn't extremely wealthy? And many of those experts were personally raised by us with great effort. There are also some that we hired from outside at a high price. If we give them to you, wouldn't that be helping our Wang clan make a wedding dress? I know that you, Wang Chong, sold the spirit vein for money, but no matter how much you pay, we won't sell it. The Duke Su's protector said with an unperturbed expression. With his interference, many people in the hall once more began to hesitate. The status and identity of a great clan was extraordinary, and they played a decisive role among the great clans of the capital. However, if Bai Siling, Zhao Yadong, and Su Gong were Wang Chong's good friends, then this matter was naturally a different matter. In the end, what Wang Chong was borrowing from them was not pots and pans, gold, silver, or other treasures. For many clans, top-class experts were related to their clan's resources and could not be easily lent out. Damn it, How does this fellow know by Xiling, Zhao Yadong and Su Gan? Wei Hao cursed in his heart. This fellow seemed to have steeled his heart to make trouble. Ha! Who said I was buying with gold and silver? Wang Chong indifferently said. Is that not the case? The guards of Duke Su's public house immediately responded with tit for tat and mocked back. Gold and silver? Treasures? To the other great clans, these things were not very attractive. As for status, the Wang clan could not provide it. Wang Chong only faintly smiled, not arguing with him. His gaze turned to the people from the various clans in the hall. First of all, I thank everyone for coming. Then, I didn't say it in the letter because words alone have no basis. If you don't hear it from my own mouth, I trust that none of you will have much confidence in the following transaction. Wang Chong paused for a moment, his expression calm and unhurried, exuding an infectious air. There's no free lunch in this world. Since I'm asking the various clans for help, I naturally can't be borrowing it for free. So, everyone can decide for yourselves. I need everyone present to lend me the strongest guards of your clans. The requirement is that they must be at least tier 4 or 5 of the true martial realm. I only need them for 3 months. During this period of 3 months, everyone must listen to my commands. And after 3 months, these guards will naturally return to your clans. And as for the price, Wang Chong paused. And for a moment, the hall was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Everyone's eyes were focused on Wang Chong. Even the Duke Su residence guard who had been making trouble this entire time was holding his breath, a look of concern on his face. Wang Chong had just clearly denied that he would spend money to borrow true martial realm experts from the various clans. But what everyone present was curious about was how Wang Chong was able to get them to agree to the transfer of experts from their clans, if it wasn't for money. Given the status of the great clans in the capital, there truly weren't many things that could attract them. A woozy steel weapon. Under the expectant gazes of the crowd, Wang Chong slowly extended a finger. For 3 months, for every true martial tier 4 or 5 martial artist that is transferred, you can obtain a woozy steel weapon from me. Once these 3 months are over, whether or not I've completed my task, you will obtain a woozy steel weapon from me. And of course, there will also be the guards of your residence. Buzz! The moment Wang Chong finished speaking, the hall fell silent for a long time. Wang Chong, you've gone mad. The first to react was Wei Hao, his eyes wide as he stared in disbelief at Wang Chong. No, it wasn't just disbelief, it was complete panic. How can we give them a woozy steel weapon? And for 3 months at that? Take back what you just said. That's right, Wang Chong. Woozy steel weapons are currently priceless. You can't buy them even if you want to. If you need some top-class experts, we can think of a way to help you. There's no need to do this. Bai Xiling was also stunned. Not even she had expected that Wang Chong had gathered so many people just to propose this sort of deal. The woozy steel sword was decisive, and it was said to be the king of weapons. Not even Wang Chong himself had many of these things. Xiling is right. Wang Chong, do you want to reconsider? Su Gan also agreed. From his perspective, no matter how he looked at it, Wang Chong was at a great disadvantage. This sort of deal was simply insane. Wang Chong, if you need help, I can also help. Our Zhao clan is a military clan, and we've probably been involved in the military for even longer than your Wang clan. In this aspect, our Zhao clan can provide assistance. There's no need for you to ask them for help. Zhao Yadong walked up to Wang Chong's side. No. Before Wang Chong could reply, someone below the stage grew anxious. The Wang clan is still a clan of ministers and generals. Words spoken cannot be taken back. Since you've already made a promise, you cannot go back on it. As soon as the voice fell, a somewhat arrogant figure squeezed through the crowd and walked out. It was not the guard from the Duke of Su's residence, but someone else. Bastard! Su Bai, it's you. Chapter 479. Wei Hao, do you think that I'm afraid of you? You want to challenge me? You're asking for trouble. Su Bai had been hiding in the crowd for a long time. Seeing Wei Hao charging at him, he wasn't afraid at all. Brat, even if I can't deal with Wang Chong openly, do you think I can't deal with you? A vicious glint flashed across Su Bai's eyes. What kind of person was Wei Hao? He was the butt of their jokes, a toy that they toyed with in the Eight Gods Pavilion. Su Bai had never feared Wei Hao. Furthermore, he had been suppressed by Wang Chong in every aspect, and he had been suppressing his anger for a long time. Boom! Su Bai pushed his palm forward, and his entire body suddenly flushed red. A metallic clang sounded from the depths of his dantian, and a majestic energy burst forth. It wasn't the energy of an Origin Energy Realm cultivator, but the stellar energy of a true martial realm cultivator. Even though he seemed ignorant, Su Bai had long reached the true martial realm. As one of the nobles of the empire, how could Su Bai possibly be ignorant and incompetent? Wei Hao, I'll let you suffer a little this time. A vicious glint flashed across Su Bai's eyes, and he seemed to be roaring his last sentence. But in the next instant, boom! A tremendous force, accompanied by a metallic clang, smashed into Su Bai's fist with the force of a landslide and a tsunami. In just a single strike, Su Bai felt as though he had been struck by a mountain, and he was sent flying like a broken kite. Boom! In a straight line behind Su Bai, 7 or 8 people were sent sprawling on the ground along with Su Bai. Ah! Su Bai, you bastard! Are you blind? What are you two doing? Are you fighting here? That the originally orderly lobby was instantly thrown into chaos. The aristocratic families that had been brought down by Su Bai couldn't help but curse out loud. Wang Chong, why aren't you reigning in Wei Hao? Su Bai sat on the floor both shocked and furious. He was shocked that Wei Hao was so formidable, and he was furious that he had embarrassed himself in front of so many people. All right, Wei Hao, that's enough. Wang Chong laughed in his heart. As soon as Wei Hao entered, he could feel that his strength had increased tremendously. The mountain ascension formula was a top-notch technique from back then. It would be a wonder if Su Bai could defeat it. However, the reason why he pulled Su Bai over wasn't to humiliate him or exact vengeance. Compared to what he had to do, these were really not worth mentioning. Su Bai, weren't you talking big? What about his ability? For the sake of Wang Chong, I'll let you off this time. But it won't be as good again. Wei Hao said bluntly. Since Wang Chong had spoken, of course he couldn't attack again. However, he could still humiliate him verbally to satisfy his craving. Su Bai's face alternated between green and purple. Surprisingly, even after suffering such humiliation, he didn't leave the banquet in anger. Wang Chong, do you mean what you said? Is the matter of borrowing a real martial realm expert for 3 months in exchange for a Wuxia steel sword still valid? Su Bai glared at Wang Chong said. In the first place, he had never intended to show his face on this trip. On the surface, he had agreed to the old master's request, but in reality, he had done something else entirely. He wanted Wang Chong to make a fool of himself. However, he couldn't ignore this matter anymore. The Wuxia steel sword was a top-notch weapon. Not only was it beautiful, it was also extremely hard to destroy. At the same time, it was indestructible and sharp. There was almost no sword in the capital that could compare to it. Thus, even though every Wuxia steel sword was incomparably expensive, it had always been priceless. More importantly, the Duke of Su had once tried to purchase a Wuxia steel sword. But in the end, they discovered that the Wuxia steel sword was only circulated in the depths of the palace and couldn't be bought outside. In the past, with the Duke of Su's status, he could easily obtain any information or item he wanted from the imperial guards there. However, the situation this time was different. In the past, the imperial guards were very respectful towards the dukes of the empire, but this time, their attitude towards the Wuxia steel sword was completely different. Once a Wuxia steel sword was auctioned, no one would easily take it out. Since the first Wuxia steel sword was auctioned until now, the number of Wuxia steel weapons that appeared outside of the imperial guards could be counted on one's fingers. Thus, to the majority of the aristocratic families, this item was still something that could only be looked up to and not played with. It was something that could only be encountered but not sought. More importantly, the aristocratic families in the capital more or less had some treasured swords that were passed down from generation to generation. And the sharpness of the Wuxia steel sword was far superior to their heirloom swords. Its value was naturally immeasurable. Martial artists had a lifespan, but there was no limit to the inheritance of swords and sabers. This was where the value of the Wuxia steel sword lay. If one were to borrow a true martial realm tier 4 or 5 expert, in just 3 months, one would be able to exchange for an indestructible Wuxia steel sword. No matter how one looked at it, this was a huge bargain. That's right, Wang Gongzi, you can't possibly go back on your words. Even the aristocratic families have to maintain their dignity. Gongzi won't disregard the Wang clan's dignity just for a Wuxia steel sword, right? 5 true martial realm experts, no problem. Wang Gongzi, you can't go back on your words. That's right. That's right. In an instant, the crowd echoed in agreement. Their attitude was completely different from that of the Prime Minister. The conditions offered by the Wang clan were simply irresistible. No one could have imagined that they would be so generous. Wait a moment, Wang Chong, don't agree to them. Seeing Wang Chong making such a promise, Bai Xiling panicked. Xiling, it's fine. With a smile, Wang Chong waved his hands to appease Bai Xiling. Then he turned to the crowd in the hall. Our Wang clan's words are naturally true to our words. However, I'll make it clear here. In the end, I only have 1,000 wood steel weapons here. If you miss this opportunity, I won't be able to give them to you even if I wanted to. Thus, I'll stop at the limit of 1,000 true martial realm experts. Whether you can obtain the Wuxia steel weapons or not will depend on yourselves. Boom. The moment Wang Chong finished his words, boom, as though a boulder had fallen, everyone in the hall rushed out in a frenzy. When the interests of the clan were at stake, no one dared to fall behind. Subai, wait a moment, Wang Chong suddenly shouted. In the crowd, Subai, who had already rushed out 7 to 8 zhang away, trembled upon hearing those words. He slowly turned around with an awful expression. Wang Chong, don't tell me you're thinking of going back on your word? It was true that he wanted to cause trouble, but he was no fool. Lending 10 top-notch experts in exchange for 10 Wuxia steel swords was a good thing that could strengthen the clan's foundation and influence the Duke Su residence's strength. Only a fool would not do such a thing. In comparison, the rift between him and Wang Chong was insignificant. If Wang Chong suddenly wanted to go back on his word, he would be dead meat. I won't go back on my word. Wang Chong flicked his sleeves and smiled calmly. But I'm sure you understand the relationship between us. So Subai, don't think about sending a few people over. With the Wuxia steel swords, they can lurk around me and cause trouble. For others, I don't have too many requests. But for you, don't send your Su clan's confidants. Don't send anyone below the 6th rank of the martial path. Also, I know that your Su clan has recruited a new batch of experts. It should be less than 2 months ago. This amount of time isn't enough for you to completely tame them, right? If you want to get the Wuxia steel swords, you should know what to do, right? Wang Chong said calmly. Subai's expression froze, his face alternating between green and white. Wang Chong was right, he did have such a plan. No matter what Wang Chong wanted to do, as long as he sent a few of the Su clan's confidants in, he would be able to get the world's sharpest Wuxia steel swords. He would also be able to understand Wang Chong's movements and secrets. If necessary, he could even stab Wang Chong in the back. If something really happened, he could just say that he didn't know anything. At most, he could just abandon the pawn to protect the carriage and push the blame to the guards. But he didn't expect that Wang Chong had already prepared for this move. And he even knew that the Su clan had recruited a new batch of experts. Wang Chong, don't get too cocky. There will be a day when you'll regret it. Although Wang Chong had seen through his plans, Subai wasn't willing to lose. With a cold snort, he threw down these words and swiftly left. This matter involving the Wuxia steel swords was no small matter. He had to go back and tell his father as quickly as possible. Wang Chong, why did you recruit so many people? And you even want to use Wuxia steel swords to trade for them? Once the people in the hall had left, Zhao Yadong took 2 steps forward and finally couldn't help but ask. Does it have to do with the Southwest? It was Bai Xiling who saw the first signs and stepped forward to ask. Wang Chong said nothing, only glanced at Bai Xiling, and then firmly nodded. The Wang clan was going to take out 1,000 top-class Wuxia steel swords to borrow experts from the great clans of the capital. The news of what had happened in the hall was quickly spread by those who had left the Wang clan residence. The entire capital was in an uproar. Damn it! I knew I should have gone. It's over, it's over. All of you were the ones who talked too much. This was a chance that was delivered to our doorstep, but we threw it away. Hurry! Do you know how much effort Patriarch Wang had to put in to obtain the Wuxia steel swords of the imperial court? Now that the Wuxia steel swords have been delivered to us, we can't miss it. I don't care why the Wang clan wants to borrow experts from our clans. Even if we die outside, we have to get those weapons. Hurry and gather the experts of the clan. In addition, get ready. I'm going to the Wang clan to pay a visit to that young Master Wang. No matter what, we have to get those spots. The great clans of the capital were in an uproar, all of them regretting their previous decisions. The southwest was currently attracting the attention of the entire capital, but it was still too far away. In comparison, the matter of this young Master Wang was closely related to the interests of their clans. Countless great clans immediately began to move. Chapter 480. 400,000 taels of gold, to buy out 3 months' worth of production from your jade slicing sword shop. This is the blueprint. Forge according to it. No mistakes are allowed. Amidst the galloping of the war horses, a heavy money bag streaked across the air, swept past the gate of the jade cutting sword tower, and fell heavily in the lobby. The heavy bag struck the ground, causing the entire building to tremble. 400,000 taels? In a flash, one figure after another emerged from the building and stared in shock at the heavy bag of money on the ground. Jade Slicing Pavilion, Jade Steel Pavilion, Gold Rending Pavilion. All the famous sword shops and smiths of the capital had received the generous reward that Wang Chong had given ahead of time. Whether it was sword shops or smiths, the monthly profit they made was extremely limited, unlike Wang Chong, who could casually sell a sword for tens of thousands of taels, hundreds of thousands of taels, or even hundreds of thousands of taels of gold. In truth, in the entire capital, probably only Wang Chong could do this. 400,000 taels of gold was already far more than these top-class sword shops and smiths could make in a year. The sword smiths and smiths had been somewhat hesitant, but now that they received the gold that Wang Chong had sent someone to give them, how could they still hesitate? In a short amount of time, all the sword shops and smiths of the capital had made their decision. In almost a single day, Wang Chong had obtained the right to forge all the sword shops and smiths of the capital. Starting from now, for the next 3 months, all the sword shops and smiths of the capital would belong to Wang Chong. All the sword shops and smiths would only forge items for Wang Chong, serving him alone, belonging to him alone. This sort of situation had never happened before, but now, it had become a reality. Rumble, like a massive machine, with Wang Chong throwing out large amounts of gold and using Wuxia steel swords to open a path. The entire capital began to rumble around Wang Chong and the Wang clan. Thick smoke rose from various parts of the capital. For the first time, all the sword shops and smiths closed their doors and refused customers, gathering together to forge weapons for a single person. The various aristocratic families in the capital also sent their experts to the Wang family. Wang Chong left these experts to Li Sai, Wei Anfang and Zhao Jingdian. From the expert guards of the aristocratic families to the troops that could be mobilized on the battlefield, it was not enough to just be skilled in martial arts. One had to go through strict training as well. However, compared to hired experts, the experts and bodyguards of the aristocratic families all had some foundation in the military. This was also the reason why Wang Chong had gathered the bodyguards of the aristocratic families first. Everything is on the right track. All that's left is me. As Wang Chong stood on the roof of a tall building, his robes flapping in the wind, he could see rows upon rows of buildings in the capital. Wisps of smoke rose into the air, and tinkling could be heard from every direction. In the distance, war horses neighed. In his days, Wang Chong felt like he was on the distant deflecting Blade Mountain. Under the command of Li Sai and Zhao Jingdian, Hundreds of bodyguards were galloping through the mountains, busily training. War had always been a massive expenditure. Whether it was manpower, food, or war equipment, ordinary clans could not afford any of these. Whether it was the Wuxia steel swords, or the enormous wealth he had gained from selling the spirit vein, Wang Chong had invested all of it into this endeavor. The machinery was already in motion, and Wang Chong was well aware that what awaited him now was a desperate battle. In this battle, it was not just the soldiers who needed to prepare, but himself as well. With a thought, Wang Chong communicated with the Stone of Destiny in his mind. Last time, when he dealt with Yin Kangshan and killed Ashina, he had obtained 200 points of destiny energy. In Sheer, he had obtained 200 points of destiny energy. Adding on the Yuzhou soldiers he had killed, and the destiny energy he had accumulated, he now had a total of 269 points. He could have saved these destiny energy for the next level of the Stone of Destiny, and exchanged them for even greater rewards. But the war in the southwest was imminent, and there was no time for that. Only by exchanging for them now would they be of use in the war. Moreover, although the rewards of the first level were not as impressive as the rewards of the next level, Wang Chong knew that one of the rewards would be of the greatest help to him. Stone of Destiny, exchange for 3 layers of destiny penetration. This thought was transmitted to Wang Chong's mind. A moment later, there was a rumble as his mind brightened and golden light surged. 3 bolts of stellar energy penetration descended from the Stone of Destiny, bursting into Wang Chong's limbs and bones like lightning, and rushing into his dantian. BZD. Wang Chong's already powerful aura rapidly grew, and the effect of the 1 layer of stellar energy penetration rose to 4, while the probability of activating stellar energy penetration rose from 5% to 20%. Every 5 attacks there would be a penetration effect. And after exchanging for 3 layers of stellar energy penetration, Wang Chong's strength rose along with it, rising from Tier 3 of the true martial realm to nearing Tier 4 of the true martial realm. Now there's only one last step left. With a thought, Wang Chong opened his eyes and looked at the 4 pills in his hand. These pills were all accumulated from 6-fingered Zhang's pills. As the saying went, money makes the mare turn the millstone. Wang Chong had sold the spirit vein and accumulated a great deal of wealth. At the same time, his position in the heart of the court alchemist had greatly increased. This time, it was the court alchemist who had sought out Wang Chong and raised his qualifications. The number of pills that could be exchanged for each month had increased by 1. Gulp. Wang Chong raised his head and swallowed the 4 pills in succession. In an instant, a stream of fire exploded in Wang Chong's body. A moment later, when the medicinal power of the pills had been exhausted, Wang Chong had successfully broken through to Tier 4 of the true martial realm. Rumble. Thunder rumbled. His gaze moved away from the capital and toward the distant west. What he saw was a vast and majestic city towering over the vast land. Black clouds covered the sky above the city, silver snakes shuttling through the clouds. Opposite the city was a protruding piece of land that reached into the clouds. Like a massive wave, it gave off the feeling that it could crash down at any moment and turn everything into ashes. That was the Uzum Plateau. In the distant Longxi, the threat from another continent and another empire could be sensed more clearly than any other region in the Central Plains. Although they were neighbors to the Central Plains, that protruding plateau seemed to come from another world. On that high grassland, countless warriors were nurtured. Even though the dynasties of the Central Plains had defeated them time and time again, they had never been able to completely crush them. The lofty sea-level difference formed an invisible and firm barrier that made it difficult for the empires of the Central Plains to exert their strength. Time and time again, the cavalry of the plateau would form groups and charge into the Central Plains, killing and pillaging, only to retreat back to the Uzum Plateau before the main army arrived. To the people of the Uzum Plateau, the Central Plains was a defenseless land. That was until that city was built and that person appeared. Big Dipper City, Geshuhan. In the distant lands of the west, this newly constructed city was like a massive nail hammered into the map of the empire's western border. It became the anchor of Longxi, an existence that countered the cavalry of the Yusang Empire. And the great general Geshu Han, who had risen to prominence like a comet, swept through the western provinces, and became the most feared existence of the Uzan Empire. The Big Dipper is high in the sky, and Geshu Han carries his saber at night. To this day he spies on his horse, but dares not cross Lintao. This folk song was not only heard in Longxi, but also in the distant Uzan Plateau. And it was precisely because of Geshu Han's existence and Big Dipper City's establishment that the wise saying, "Of all the riches in the world, none surpass Longyu." Nay! Thunder rumbled and dark clouds hung low. All of a sudden, the fierce neigh of a warhorse pierced through the clouds, coming from the summit of the continent. The warhorse galloped. In just a moment, an iron-blooded murderous black figure immediately appeared at the top of the continent. Behind the black figure was a large flag fluttering in the wind. Enemy attack! Almost at the same time that the figure appeared, a Big Dipper army sentry on the walls of Big Dipper City let out a shrill cry. They had been stationed on the borders of Longxi for many years, so they were extremely familiar with the Uzan Empire's cavalry. The heaviness of the heavy plate armor even seeped into their figures, and could be seen from far away. But this wasn't the reason for his nervousness. Ever since the great general had established Big Dipper City, the Uzan Empire had suffered successive defeats. It had been a long time since they had dared to openly appear before Big Dipper City. This was definitely not an ordinary situation. Rumble! Almost at the same time that the sentry's warning sounded, the entire Big Dipper City began to tremble. Tens of thousands of soldiers surged out of the city and swiftly assembled into battle formations. Even though there were so many of them, there was no panic in Big Dipper City. Even as they rushed to their posts, they strictly obeyed some sort of order. In the span of just a few breaths, the bustling Big Dipper City had suddenly quieted down. All the soldiers took their positions, and a solemn aura emanated from the formation and enveloped the earth. The entire city was so quiet that it seemed like an empty city. Big Dipper's long years of training were on full display at this moment. From the very beginning, they had entered a state of daily combat readiness, and in the span of a few breaths, they had swiftly arrived at the city. But even though the city was growing quieter and quieter, the commotion outside the city was growing louder and louder. Rumble! A massive sound came from another towering continent like a tsunami. At first it was barely audible, but gradually it grew louder and louder. When it got closer, everyone could clearly hear that it was the clattering of tens of thousands of hooves and the clattering of metal. It's the Uzan Empire's army. The expressions of the Big Dipper soldiers on the city walls changed one after another. Having presided over Longxi for so many years, they were already used to fighting with the Uzan Empire. But this battle was clearly different. Listening to the intense clattering of hooves, the army that had appeared at the border of the Uzan Highlands was in the tens of thousands, far surpassing the level of the previous battles. The sound of the earth quaking indicated that there were at least 100,000 soldiers fighting. "Look over there." Suddenly, someone pointed into the distance and shouted. Whoosh! Strong winds blew. Under the gazes of countless people, a huge flagpole, at least 100 feet long, suddenly rose from the top of that towering continent in the distance. On the flagpole, a huge blood-soaked war flag fluttered in the wind, fluttering in the wind. On the blood-red flag, there was a huge three-headed white lion bearing its fangs and brandishing its claws. Even from a distance, it could be seen clearly. The three-headed white lion flag. It's Witadra Konglo. Chapter 481. Not many people overseeing the Longxi border had seen it, but there was almost no one who did not know of it. This was because it represented a legendary existence of the Uzan Empire. The number one king of generals under the Tsempo, the war god of the Uzan Empire, Witadra Konglo. In the Uzan Empire, this person had a far higher status than the great generals of Huashu Wuzong and Dusong Mangpoch. His status was equivalent to the junior guardian of the Tang dynasty, the crown prince, Wang Zhongxi, who was hailed as the war god of the Tang dynasty. In the past, Wang Zhongxi had swept through Shilong, almost fighting his way up to the Uzun Plateau, and threatening the capital of the Uzun Empire. In the end, he had failed because he had run into Witadra Konglo. In the entire Uzun Empire, the only person who could faintly contend against the war god Wang Zhongxi was Witadra Konglo. It was said that this person was a divine commander, but ever since that war, Witadra Konglo had never appeared again. No one had expected that this legendary expert of the Uzun Empire would appear at a time like this. In a flash, all the soldiers of the Big Dipper army looked in the same direction. The shadow of a tree, the name of a man. This legendary #1 king of generals of the Uzun Empire was far too famous, and the pressure it exerted was far too great. If there was one person in all of Big Dipper City that could contend against him, it was the great general. For a moment, everyone's eyes fell on the top floor of Big Dipper City, on that majestic figure that had appeared at some point. The Big Dipper was high, and Geshuyi carried a blade. No matter when, the name of the Big Dipper Great General Geshu Han was in existence that could stabilize the western border. Witadra Konglo. Geshu Han stood on top of the towering city gate tower, his entire body exuding an aura as heavy as a mountain, as tempered as steel and iron. As an imperial great general, Geshu Han had a rare handsomeness and an oppressive aura. His long and narrow eyes shone like the sun and moon, the opening and closing of yin and yang. Although he was not angry, he exuded a dignified and awe-inspiring majesty. As a former subordinate of the Tang dynasty war god Wang Zhongxi, Geshu Han had experienced many things, including the battle between the Uzun White Lion Great General Witadra Konglo and Wang Zhongxi. After the battle, Yu Sang had suffered heavy losses, and Wang Zhongxi, affected by the terrain of the plateau and the resistance of Witadra Konglo, withdrew from the Tibetan plateau. Geshu Han had personally participated in the Great General's War, but Great General Lion War. Only Geshu Han knew that the reason Witadra Konglo did not invade the Central Plains again was not because Witadra was benevolent, but because Witadra Konglo had suffered heavy injuries in that war and had no choice but to retreat. However, after so many years, his injuries should have more or less healed. When there's an abnormality, there must be a monster. It's been a very long time since Yu Sang and the Great Tang have fought. For Witadra Konglo to suddenly appear here, just what does he want? Geshu Han stood motionlessly on the city walls, his black armor and long hair fluttering in the wind. After experiencing countless battles, there were very few things that could stir his emotions. But at this moment, Geshu Han felt a little uneasy. It was not because of Witadra Konglo, but because the Uzun Empire's actions were too abnormal. Witadra Konglo was known as the White Lion Great General, the #1 Great General of the Uzun Empire, and his offensive prowess was so great that even the Tang dynasty war god Wang Zhongxi couldn't deal with him at his peak. But Geshu Han's goal was not to conquer Uzun. Fighting in the wilderness and defending a city were two completely different matters. No matter how fierce and valiant the Uzun cavalry were, as long as the Big Dipper army did not fight in the wilderness, the White Lion Great General Witadra Konglo wouldn't be able to do anything. After so many years, the Big Dipper army had killed tens of thousands of Uzun cavalry. It could be said that in the entire Tang dynasty, if there was a single army that understood the Uzun the most and could best counter them, it would definitely be Geshu Han's Big Dipper army. An army tempered by iron, blood, and fire was enough to hold its own against any storm. It wasn't something that could be easily wiped out by sheer numbers. Geshu Han was confident that the Uzun would understand such a simple principle. Witadra Konglo would never do anything without a goal. If not for the White Lion Great General's extraordinary intelligence, he wouldn't have been able to block Wang Zhongxi's attack. As Geshu Han stood on the city walls, his mind was in turmoil, countless thoughts flashing through his mind. The situation in the empire, including that of Longxi, flew through his mind. Lintao was on the edge of Longxi, and with Big Dipper City there, the Uzun basically had no hope. Gao Xianji was presiding over Suiya in the northwest. With Feng Chongqing's assistance and the two twin paragons of the empire, one civil and one military, even if the White Lion Great General personally led the charge, there wouldn't be any surprises. As for Qixi, Fomenlinta was also presiding over it. This was a veteran general through and through. Back when he was presiding over the western regions, he had fought many battles with the Uzun. He had even stopped the Arab assault, so how could the Uzun do it? In truth, if one looked down from the sky, they would discover that from Sueya at the end of the western regions to Chishi, and then to Longxi, the entire border of the Uzun Plateau was surrounded by the three Tang dynasty protectorates, forming an iron wall that firmly locked the Uzun to the plateau. Meanwhile, An Sichuan's biting protectorate was intimidating the eastern and western Turkic Khaganates, and with its massive army, it could reinforce the three armies and the three protectorates at any time. It was impossible for the Tibetans to catch up in this direction, unless Jianghe in the southwest. A bolt of lightning flashed through Geshu Han's mind, and his body trembled as if he suddenly understood something, his face turning unsightly. The only place in the entire Central Plains that could give the Uzun a chance was Jianghe in the southwest. It was no secret that Xinyu Zhongtong had led 180,000 Tang dynasty elites on an expedition, but had been defeated by Jelifeng. But Geshu Han had always believed that even if Xinyu Zhongtong was defeated, he would only suffer some minor losses. Given the Tang army's strength, as long as they could stand firm and rely on their own strength and reinforcements, they were completely capable of defeating Jelifeng. But at this moment, Geshu Han had an extremely ill foreboding. Boom! Boom! While Geshu Han's brows were rising in unease, the deep and desolate sound of a bull horn came from the distant plateau. Next to the blood-red banner of the three-headed white lion, a smaller black banner was raised by tinsome figures. On this black banner was a striking image of a writhing black yak. The two banners, one red and one black, one large and one small, stood side by side. Even Geshu Han's expression flickered at the sight of those two war banners. Anyone who had ever lived in Longxi would be familiar with this banner. It was the banner of the Uzun Great General Dusong Mengpoch. Two of the Uzun Great Generals had appeared on the border of the Uzun continent, simultaneously threatening the Longxi territory of the Tang dynasty. At this moment, even Geshu Han felt a heavy pressure. In any empire, a general-level figure would play a decisive role. These imperial great generals rarely appeared. But for two Uzun great generals to appear at the same time and attack Big Dipper City was an unprecedented situation. At this moment, not just Geshu Han, but all the officers and soldiers of the Big Dipper army also felt a heavy pressure. Two Uzun great generals working together was a completely different matter. Rumble! After a brief moment of silence, thousands of Uzun cavalry poured down from the distant Uzun plateau like dumplings into a pot, sweeping toward Big Dipper City with a momentum that could topple mountains and overturn seas. The atmosphere between the heavens and the earth suddenly became extremely tense. Boom! On the top of the watchtower, Geshu Han suddenly stepped forward, his handsome and imposing face exuding a cold and somber aura. Everyone hear my order. All soldiers stand ready. Geshu Han's right hand pressed down on his saber, and a storm of energy soared into the sky. At almost the same time, the 60,000 elites of the Big Dipper army roared, exploding with a steely and murderous aura that soared into the sky. The battle had finally begun. The long-vanished great general king of the Uzun Empire, Witadra Konglo, had joined forces with Dusong Mengpoch to attack Big Dipper City in Lintao. This news shook the entire capital. But even more shocking was the news from the empire's southwest. Xinyu Zhongtong had been defeated. The 180,000 soldiers had suffered a crushing defeat under the pincer attack of Mengshi Zhao and Uzun. More than half of the 180,000 elites had been killed or injured. And even Li Jingyi and the 60,000 soldiers sent to reinforce Xinyu Zhongtong had been intercepted by Uzun. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.